Yo, am I live? Hold up. Okay, it worked. Okay, cool. I had to make sure. I thought that I might have been on the social supplies channel still, connected to that. I was about to say, whoops. Okay, we're rolling. My bad, y'all. Cool. I had to make sure. What's up? I thought that I might have been on the social supplies channel still, connected to that. I was about to say, whoops. Yo, that would have been crazy. Okay, we're rolling. My bad, y'all. Cool. I had to make sure. I thought that I might have been on the social supplies channel still, connected to that. I was about to say, whoops. Yo, that would have been crazy. Okay, we're rolling. My bad, y'all. Cool. I had to make sure. I thought that I might have been on the social supplies channel still, connected to that. I was about to say, whoops. Yo, that would have been crazy. Okay, we're rolling. My bad, y'all. Okay. There we go. What's up, everybody? We got a lot of stuff to do today. I'm still locked in on a task that I'm doing. Would this be cool to play in the background? I think so. Yeah, let's get social supply, this video going. Because we are coding and chilling. This video is going crazy right now. I'm so excited for the newest drop, the one from this past weekend. Anyway, I hope everybody's had a good week out there. You know, it's been a while since I popped up. Let me get the chat set up. Oh, it is? My bad. What's up, bro? Okay, now I'm louder. Turn that down. There we go. I don't know why I waited until starting this to hit settings. That's how you know it's been a while. But yo, I thought I was going live from their channel. Alright, let me get organized. We'll be working on. Out of body. That's just how I feel when I'm around you, shorty. What should be the first thing? Say it, but girl, we both taught it. Why second guess? I gotta fix this personnel form. Before we get started, I'm gonna do a little refresher on React, since I'm about to work with React. Let's do a quick, because I was gonna do this and record it, but while we're at it, we might as well just go ahead and do it. Since I'm about to work with React, I should do a refresher to, you know, review everything before I start working. What was it? Every React concept explained in 12 minutes. I like this video because it's so short.
You can use an empty component called a React.
Let's start from the
React is a
beginning.
JavaScript library full of fancy terms like reconciliation, composition, and error boundaries. But what do all these terms actually mean? Let's start from the beginning with components. Components are the building blocks of every React app. They allow us to make all the visible parts of our applications, like buttons, inputs, or even entire pages. Just like Legos, you can use components as many times as you want.
So that's always a good place to stop, right? Components. What are components? That's the most important thing, isn't it? That's every single part of the website. And I love that analogy of a Lego set with every block being a different component. And that component could be the header, the footer, buttons, input forms, entire pages even, right? And let's continue.
Every React component is a JavaScript function that returns markup. But since React is a JavaScript library, React components don't return HTML markup. They actually return something called JSX, which is JavaScript in disguise. JSX is optional, but the alternative way to make user interfaces is with the function createElement, which gets annoying to write pretty fast, so everyone just uses JSX. Since JSX is JavaScript, you can't write attributes like you would in HTML. You have to write them in the camel case style. That means HTML attributes like class become class name.
I'm
Unlike
glad
HTML, which is static.
I'm glad that I understand that now, right? That JSX, well, I always thought that JSX was JavaScript mixed with HTML. And when you think about it, every component pretty much has that because you're returning your whatever it is that you're building. Whether it be, like we said, whether it be every component, the header, the footer, the button, whatever that is, that's what your function is returning as JSX to show the rendering in the HTML that appears on the site, right? But then he's also about to say that you can also have dynamic values within that HTML. That's why it's JavaScript mixed with HTML,
unchanging.
right?
The benefit of using React is that you can use dynamic JavaScript values in your JSX. If you have data, you can display it in your JSX using curly braces. Curly braces accept values like strings and numbers.
Yeah, so by dynamic, that just means that the values can change. Like you could have state be a score, and now your so your HTML is returning like a score where the button would go up and down if it was clicked. That's what he means by dynamic value, like a value that would change there. I know that's obvious for some people, but as always, we're speaking to everyone, and we're starting from scratch. And
you can use them to make your attributes dynamic, and you can style React elements using a JavaScript object within the curly braces. Since JavaScript functions can only return one thing, in React, you can only return one parent element from a component, so you can't do this without getting a big error. We could fix this by wrapping these components in a div, but maybe you don't want to add another element to the page. Instead, you can use an empty component called a React fragment. Okay.
I don't know why you would have two components in one. I mean, I guess, yeah, I think that's fine that you can't do that, right? Have the header and main, because isn't the whole point of doing a component that you're separating the concerns, that you're keeping everything in just one spot, so that way it's reusable. You can use it. You can use the header on every page. If this was a button, you could use that button on every page. If it was just something that was holding likes, making the likes go up and down. So you don't want that to be too complicated. You don't want to be mixing stuff up in there, because then now you're using both of them whenever you try to use one of them. And you probably would have to write some sort of extra stuff in there to try and make whatever one you didn't want to use at that moment work.
Could fix this by wrapping these components in a div, but maybe you don't want to add another element to the page. Instead, you can use an empty component called a React fragment. Okay, but what if I want to pass data into another component? For that, you use something called props. To make a prop, create a name on the component you want to pass data to and set it equal to some value. And that's it. You can then use that prop in the component You passed it to. Props refers to properties on an object, which is what you get in the parameters of each component. To use the prop, take it from the object like a...
I think that this used to kind of trip me up because in normal functions, these are just arguments, right? But I guess that's the same thing. A property is just a property now, but you know, just got to remember that when you are writing your components, that's a prop that you can now return, render it, and reuse in the children components. And by parent and children, that just means that on your component tree in your index.jss or app.jsx, whatever, at the root, that you're wrapping this. Let me show an example while we're trying to talk about it. In the app, or is it index? Yeah, so see here, this is the theme, right? So that's like, and then you wrap it. Anything in between is a child. And so whatever data you put inside your prop, whatever properties you put, will automatically accessible by whatever the children are, whatever are under it within the tree. So you wrap your entire app with the theme, of course, with the browser, which is how you change your pages. And then with React is like the, you know, the top of the chain. Yep.
like a normal JavaScript property. Think of them like custom
Yo, what's up,
attributes you can
Adrian?
add to any component. So wait, can you pass anything as a prop? Yes, you can. You can even pass other components as...
So you can even pass other components as props. You can even pass state as prop. You could pass anything as prop. And what finally made that click in for me was I was building user context for our website, right? Which basically means like the ability to be a user. And these users have roles. You have to be like an admin or not, you know, a regular user or an admin. And each, there's different responsibilities or different, what am I trying to say? Different properties, I guess, of each of those roles that are different. And so we had to create a user component, or well, context, which is holding the state of that and then providing it throughout the entire app. And that had to be in a component wrapping the entire app so that it's now accessible everywhere. You know, that's very, very interesting to me how that works, but how in software engineering you really have to think about everything. You have to think about the information that you're passing, but you also have to create the ability to hold that information, and then you have to create the ability to pass that information, and then you have to also pass it down. So you literally have to break everything down and create what it is, and still create the ability to hand it, and then to pass it off. Like, we really have to get so intricate with this stuff. But it's super interesting, and I like how React works in that way.
as props using the children prop. If you make opening and closing tags for a component, you can pass other components in between them. These passed components are called children, and you can access them on the children prop of the parent component. And it's
How are props different than arguments? I really think that they're not different, right? Because what does an argument do? I mean, anything, right? Can you put functions as arguments? You can, can't you? I honestly think it's the same thing, but let's go ahead and ask ChatGPT. I think that's a good question to ask, because we're trying to really understand this stuff. Let's go to Code Mentor. In React components, arguments are in the same place that regular JavaScript functions are. What is the difference props and arguments. I might have said that wrong, but it's all good. In React, while components resemble functions in many ways, there are specific distinctions between props and arguments in the context of React components compared to regular JavaScript functions. In regular JavaScript functions, functions receive values called arguments directly when they are called, and these arguments are defined in the function's signature. Right? Here, X and Y are arguments. React components, here, let's zoom in a little bit. They put X and Y here, where if this was React, these would be properties. And it's returning the same. Okay, the difference right off the bat that I'm seeing is that this would be JSX. If it was, But let's continue. React components, especially functional components, are similar to functions, but with the key difference in how they receive their data. A React component receives its data through a single object called props. Okay, not like multiple there with the comma in between. Shorter for properties. This prop object is passed to the component by React itself based on the attributes provided to the component when it's used in the JSX syntax. Okay, so right. So with an argument, you're basically creating more of a, what would you call this situation here? Just a function? Just the ability to do something? But then in React, you are, with your prop, you're now accessing it, and with the JSX, whatever your structure is going to be, like how this is just an H1. In JSX, this could have been, an H2, an H3, whatever HTML you wanted there, but then you're also able to access the prop that you put here, right? And then use that as a dynamic value. Or whatever it is, even. It doesn't have to be that. It can be. This prop object is passed to the component by React itself based on the attributes provided to the component. In this case, props is an object containing all the properties to the greeting component. Right. So whatever you put in here is a property to the greeting component. And then name is a property called. So then within all of the children, if we go back here, you could now access that greeting from any one of these that you put in between as a child of greeting. Differences, flexibility in parameter handling. Wait, props is an object containing all the properties from the greeting, and name is a property on the props object accessed by props.name. Right. Okay. So by just putting .name, I'm assuming that could have been anything, and it would have still been accessible because he tied it to props within the curly braces. The difference is flexibility in parameter handling. JavaScript functions can accept any number of parameters, and the parameters can be any type. Cool. So JavaScript functions can any number of parameters, and they can be any type. React components conventionally accept a single object, so it's only one prop which holds all the values passed to the component. But that prop can still be another function, or even a component as well, but it can only be one thing. But that one thing could have further, functionality within it. Structure and conventions. JavaScript functions are general purpose and can be designed in various ways to handle inputs, right? But React components are meant for building user interface segments. So React components are more specifically built for the UI, for the front end, and versus how JavaScript is for everything. Cool. See, I didn't really. It's like we understand this stuff, but not fully, right? So it's always good. That's what I'm trying to focus on, zooming in and really fleshing out and deepening my understanding in all of these concepts. Seamlessly with React ecosystem, using props for input to maintain a consistent and predictable structure across different components. Cool.
For something called composition, which is about organizing our React components in the most optimal way. The children prop is really useful for creating layout components when you want your children to have the same common layout. The key prop is in
Right.
most optimal way. The children prop is really useful for creating layout components when you want your children to have the same common layout.
Oh, so our props, like, I wonder if we can get a list of these. What is this called, right? Is that the property? Because I know that children is a thing, but what else is there? Is there like message? Is there, you know, let's see, let's ask ChatGPT that. Other than children, what are some of the other most used props in React? Because children, I thought that that was just something that happened anyway. It's almost like too dark. Let me turn. There we go. In React, props, short for properties, are a central concept used to pass data and event handlers in components, while children is one of the most common props used to pass elements directly between the opening and closing tags of a component. There are several other frequently used props in React development. Here are some of the most common. Class name, used to specify a CSS class for styling components. It's analogous. I don't know. That word is kicking my ass. To the class attributes in HTML. How do you pronounce that? Let's see.
We are looking at how to pronounce this word, as well as how to say more interesting and related words as well in English. So
Right. We use it, but we don't know exactly how it works.
For more learning, how do you say it?
Why wouldn't he just say the word?
Analogous.
Analogous. Okay. Analogous. Used to apply inline styles. Okay, wait. It's analogous to the class attribute in HTML. Right. Class name equals content. Style, used to apply inline styles to a component. So style is one for inline styles, where the props accept a JavaScript object with camel case properties rather than CSS, like div. So you could do font size, color red, text, if you do div style. Okay, cool. Which of course we have done, right? These are, true, on change, on submit, on click. Okay, I didn't know that those are properties. Because on click, that's basically the event listener where you're looking for a click. On change is when something changes, right? And on submit is when you click a button and you're submitting it. So that's a property. So let's take a look at how you would write. I like to do two tabs at the same time. Like keep track of the main one that I'm using and then come up with little questions for the other one as well. And what was I about to ask? I was going to say, can you do a on click component? Can you give an example of a on click component? So here you're importing React, then you have a function counter button, initialize state to keep track of the count, const. So here's, it's variable, an array. Well, you're initializing the state. So with use state, which I'm sure must have been one that he was probably about to say. I'm sure that's one of these as well. Use state and then the function to handle the click event. Const handle click. Leave that part. And so this is an actual function, you know. Set count plus 1, incrementing the count. And then here is where you return. And in the JSX, you're using on click, handle click, which is this functionality here, as well as using state. Click me, count is count. Cool. Yeah, and then so that's, and then now you have your dynamic value here, count, within the returned JSX, which also used the on click function. Right. Cool. Was this the where was the video? I forgot which tab I was on. All right, it was 12 React concepts.
Common layout. The key prop is another built-in prop to React. And no, unlike the name implies, it doesn't unlock anything interesting. The key prop is used so React can tell one component apart from another, usually when you're creating a list with the map function. A key is just a unique string or number to identify a component. You'll usually know when you need to add a key because React will warn you in the console. Fortunately, if you don't have a unique value for each item, you can always use the current index.
Wait a minute. Let me back that up because I have seen that error before.
From the map function. When you optimal way. The children prop is really useful for creating layout components when you want your children prop to react. And no,
key props.
Unlike the name implies, it doesn't unlock anything interesting. The key prop is used so React can tell one component apart from another, usually when you're creating a list with the map function.
So basically an ID, right?
Apart from another, usually when you're creating a list with the map function. A key is just a unique string or number to identify a component. You'll usually know when you need to add a key because React will warn you in the console. Fortunately, if you don't have a unique value for each item, you can always use the current index from the map function. But how does React take all my amazing code and make it display something in the browser? That process is called rendering. React does this for us, but it's important to know how it works because sometimes we can do a bad thing and cause it to infinitely re-render, which crashes our app. The way React knows how and when to render our application is using something called the
rendering. You guys know what rendering is, right? How would you explain what rendering is? I know that that's taking the code, compiling it, and displaying the UI, right? I think that that's basically what it is. We finished this question, so yeah, let's ask. Can you explain rendering? Right, into the DOM. In the context of React, rendering refers to the process of converting React components into the DOM elements that the browser can display. Rendering is a fundamental part of how React applications update their UI. So that's what happens in the return. It's rendering. Update your in response to user interaction and state changes or prop updates. And that's as different things like if you have your on click event listeners and functions and what's taking inputs on the site. Right, it's when you render. When React component is instant. Man, we're getting the most difficult words today. React starts the rendering process. A component in React can be defined either as functional component or a class component. React components return JSX, which is a syntax extension that looks similar to HTML. JSX is not understood by browsers directly. It's transformed into React elements during the build process, usually using Babel. Okay, JSX elements tell React what we want to see on the screen. React reads these objects, uses them to construct the DOM, and keep it updated. And that's a virtual DOM, which I do know I have heard that that's an API for the real DOM. React maintains a lightweight representation of the actual DOM in memory, known as the virtual DOM. So it's always looking at that virtual DOM, and whenever our components render and make changes to that, then the browser knows to change the real DOM based on how the virtual DOM appears after the rendering. When the state of a component changes, React first updates the virtual DOM. This involves creating a new tree containing the React elements. Right, and then that's where what this reconciliation is about, where React compares the virtual DOM to the previous one, a process known as diffing. And during that, React identifies what has changed between the two and then updates. Cool. Now the different types of rendering is initial, server side, static side, client side, and just re-rendering updates.
The virtual DOM, also known as the VDOM. Okay, but what does DOM mean? DOM stands for Document Object Model, which is what every browser uses to model all the HTML elements on a web page. And when you draw it out, it kind of looks like a tree. Here's the complete rendering process.
A pyramid scheme.
If the state of our React app changes, then React updates the virtual DOM, which is quicker to update than the real DOM. Then React uses a process called diffing to compare the updated virtual DOM to a previous version to see what's changed. Once it sees what's different, React uses a process called reconciliation to update the real DOM with the changes that it found. Whenever someone uses our app, tons of events take place like clicks, mouse movements, and key presses, many of which we need to detect. Event handling is how we take those user events and do something with them. React has a lot of built-in events such as onClick, onChange, and onSubmit. These three events are ones you'll probably...
Button input form. Clicks, changes, and submits, and event handling. That's how you can just build everything with components and have everything just reacting and working, rendering
if we
when
want
it needs
to alert users when a button is clicked, we would add the onClick prop to the button and connect it to a function that would show that alert. To manage data in our React apps, we need to use state. Not that kind of state, though. State is like a snapshot from a camera. It's a picture of our app at any given time. To manage state, we also can't use JavaScript variables. They don't cause our app to re-render. Instead, we use special functions like useState and useReducer. useState takes an argument that serves as the starting value of the state variable, which is likes in this example, and returns an array containing the state variable and a function to update that state. Using our button example, we could also...
All of this watching this is making me want to code. And I do have a lot to do, so I should get started. I just wanted to do a short little refresher. We got about 5 minutes into this. But yeah, because I'm going to have to use some of this stuff. So let's find something to play. I guess I feel like that video earlier was a little too hype. I need something chill. Let's do Final Fantasy music. This one is super chill. I also definitely have to get this bright ass light down a little bit. Okay, cool. How can I make it to where both my screens are showing? Hold on. There we go. Cool. I think that'll work. All right. So we are here. Okay. I need to make sure that my add personnel form is accessing the right data. That's basically what I need to ask ChatGPT to help with. Accessing the tenant profiles sub-collection data from this tenant provider, right? Because this is where, wait a minute, fetch active tenant profiles. Or is it the user context? Current user, tenant IDs. Which one? So my fetch active tenant profile based. Yeah. That's the tenant provider. Okay. So yeah, from here. The role, badge, number, all of the personnel data. From the. Within the tenant profiles sub-collection is a personnel data mapped with role and such. I need to connect that personnel data to this add personnel form. Right? The add personnel form is designed to add personnel to a work item by updating the personnel's work item and project fields within the Firestore database. To ensure that it correctly accesses and updates the personnel data from the tenant profile sub-collection, we need to confirm a few things. User context and tenant ID. Confirm that the useGetUser hook correctly provides the user object and that it contains tenant ID. That does. This ID should be used to filter the relevant tenant profiles. Fetch personnel data. Use fetch all personnel. Custom hook should be designed to fetch all personnel from the tenant profile subcollection of the current user. Right. This hook should return personnel data with the loading state. Tenant-specific filtering. Within add personnel form, filter the personnel list to include only those profiles that match the current tenant ID. That I think we need to do. Enter to set the first tenant. Oh, that's the provider. We need to look at the add personnel form. Let me close some of these. What's this? When did I change? I guess save that. Index. That was this. Yeah, we did that. Okay. Not sure what the most recent change was on that one. Tenant context, utilities. Fetch user with roles. Okay, add personnel form. My bad. Alright, updating personnel records. When submitting the form, ensure that the update doc function targets the correct document in Firestore, which should be specific personnel document within the tenant profile subcollection for the tenant ID. Right. And then UI component, ensure that your form elements and state management correctly handle the personnel data such as when selecting a personnel profile to add to a work item. Here's an example of how you can modify your code to make sure the add personnel form is correctly accessing. Make sure the personnel state is defined correctly, and then you're using, I know that is, and then you're using a unique identifier. Const personnel set personnel use state I tenant profile. So that would be here. Use effect const fetch tenant profiles. If user and tenant ID fetch tenant profiles. Logic to fetch personal data from the tenant profile sub-collections for the logged in user is tenant ID. Firestore queries to get the documents there. Right. So then this one definitely is not set up to do that. Add personnel form. We're using useGetUser. It's getting it from the user. Oh wait, yeah. Fetch all personnel. Do we really need to get all the personnel? Shouldn't it? Oh wait. Is this add or edit? Because I was going to say, shouldn't it be just the user that is logged in? Yo, what's up, bro? I just now pulled that up. All right. In your tenant provider, you're using fetching the active tenant profile based on the user's selected tenant ID, which is good. Okay, I thought so. You will need to ensure that the fetch active tenant profile function is successfully retrieving the right document and that you're setting it in the state correctly. The problem with that is that our project has so many errors right now that I can't really test anything until I configure all of these other things. Which, let's take a little look just to kind of see what we're dealing with. Use user tenant imported as that was not found. Oh, well that's easy. I deleted this context use user tenant, so I just need to go to all these different files and remove the import statement. That's not that bad. Once we do that, we'll get a more accurate look. So I guess I'll start there because I need to do that anyway. And I'm gonna come back and finish this add personnel form. But okay, this one is components personnel form index.tsx personnel form. That's this one. So I just need to remove. Wait, what if it's in here? I must be using it as well. So I'm gonna have to rewrite all of these, aren't I? If it's in here, because I need to now change the context with the one that I created to replace that. Good. Well, let's see what happens if I just delete it. Does that set off any other errors? Nope, it just goes away. Can you close the door, please, buddy? Okay, yeah, see? We are using it. Use user tenant. So I need to replace this with my new context, with my new what was it that replaced that? User context, right? Instead of use user tenant, or was it the tenant provider? User and tenant ID. I'm pretty sure we replaced that with this one. Handle submit, because this is accessing full name, their first name and their last name, all of the personnel data, tenant profiles, construct the path to update the personnel information. I wonder, I think this is right, because it's just the tenant ID. So yeah, we need to update this to use our new user context. Let's go ahead and drop that in here too, just to see if this will help make this a bit easier. So I need to use, yeah, I should be able to explain that. I deleted user tenant context and replaced it with user context and tenant provider. Can you help me rewrite this component to use these instead of the old deleted context? Right? Let's put this one in here. And then tenant provider as well. Based on the new structure of user context and tenant provider, you would need to rewrite the personnel form component to make use of these providers. The process includes obtaining the current user and tenant data and then performing operations such as adding new personnel record. Here's an updated version of the personnel form component that uses the user context and tenant provider. Importing everything, doc, update doc, reference. So it's gotta tap into the back end as well. Interface iProps is boolean, is open, on close. Export default function, so it's, that's the personnel form, current user, tenant ID with the tenant profile. Okay, it just replaced, so it's mostly right here that we're making a change, where we're using the context to access the user and tenant information. And then, actually it's more than one spot. Okay. And that was this one, right? So what changed in the imports? I guess all of these. Well, doc and update doc is there, ref, and that one's there, that one's there. Lead, trade, and personnel rate are there. User context and tenant context need to be added. And then these, we're missing use context. I think that was it. Right. And then iProps is good. Export default function. Personal form is open, close. All of our variables and such. Now we add this. Current user and tenant ID profiles. And we replace that one. Cannot find module. Wait, where do you import that from? Wait, yeah, that should be right. Let's look at another one. Did we do this one yet? Use get user. User context and tenant. Is it like this? Context is like 1 over. Let's search and see someone else that's importing user context. Another component. Import user context from no results. Okay, so we got another. We need another component. So this one. Oh, context first. Dot dot slash context. And then context. Oh, whoops. Context. Then what? A dot? Or was it a slash? Yeah, like that. There we go. Okay. Now, async function handle submit. That's the same. If current user, not just user, current user or tenant ID, you got your error. Now set is submitting. Path has changed according to new structure. Right. Instead of user doc reference, we're using. Oh wait, no. We're still using. Wait, are we? Do I delete these? Yeah, I do. Oh wait, yeah, it's right there. And it is a little different. Current user. Current user dot UID. And personnel path is now this. Tenant profiles straight to the subcollection with tenant ID and person. Wait, it was already that. Okay, never mind. That is the same. Cool. So that part was right. We just needed to change the context, and which then changed the user. Everything else is the same. In the updated personnel form, I've imported use context from React to access the context data from user context and tenant context. I've also destructured current user and tenant ID from their respective context providers, which are now being used with the component to perform operations related to the current user and tenant. Please ensure that the user context and tenant context are properly integrated. See, we're gonna have to wait. Oh wait, no, I know it's right in the component tree. So that you can provide the necessary data to this component. Also verify that any path changes in Firestore document references are updated according to the new data structure. Yeah, we're good in the back end. Wait, what about this one? The image ref. Okay, this needs to be. We just saw how to do that up here. It was current user.uid. Right? Let's do one more double look here. This is for image though. Storage, reference storage. And then this is the path. I think that is correct. Yeah. It's storage because that's where we store our images on the back end, not the document database. But current user.uid. Current, like that. Okay, cool. Everything else should be the same. I think, what about, let's look at the rendering here just to make sure. Handle submit. Hey, what's up? What you say? Oh yeah, it is. I keep turning it off and on. See how it says SOS there at the top? Some SIM card thing like knocked out or something, like I damaged the inside of it when I dropped it. Kind of. Can you do that? My bad. Okay. Where were we? Oh yeah. I was looking at the rendering just to make sure that it was mapped to the correct place, and I think it is. Looks like it. So let's continue. Was there another, or what was the next one? Project forms, create project form. Man, how many of these do we have to do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Jeez. Wait. Isn't there a way to replace all at one time? But the only thing I'm worried about is, well, after we just pretty much saw what we need to do to each of them. So maybe we can do this a little fast, as long as I keep this here as a reference. That I could just make sure, because it has to be very similar, right? Just to stay organized, let's close this one. We just did this one. We don't need that. We don't need this or that for now. Okay. Cool. Yo, what's up, y'all? Yeah, man, y'all could probably tell when I started this, I was a little faded as well. I'm starting to snap out of it now. But man, I'm doing this. I'm working on this thing still, man. I have until Monday at like 12 o'clock or like to finish this by. Luckily, this is still Saturday. So I got all day. I got all night tonight, all day tomorrow. Because I'm actually supposed to be working on something after this. But man, this is so many files, bro. Look at how many different files that is related to. You just gotta be like swift. Alright, so yeah, let's continue. Alright. So that was the first example. Let's keep that there. I gotta crack some of this Chick-fil-A open. I'm sorry. And I feel you on being hungover, so you're not coding right now. But anybody who's not hungover, y'all should be coding too. It's Code and Chill, where we're all coding and chilling, or reading documentation, watching a tutorial while working. What this has been doing, what this week has been doing, is really making me wish that I really zoomed in when I was doing courses. Like really took notes, wrote stuff down, and reviewed it afterwards, and like wrote it down again. I was just speeding through trying to get the certificate on my LinkedIn and apply for stuff. Okay, let's roll. Let's keep rolling. Create project form. It's got that user tenant and importing use get user. So we need to change it to this. Then const user tenant ID and use user tenant needs to be changed to const tenant ID and tenant profile, right? If user was now if current user. See, I knew this was going to be similar. Current user, oh, lowercase c, right? Current user, wait a minute. If not current user. Oh, there's a space. No, there wasn't. What? Use tenant. Okay, let's just try and keep going. What is it saying? Cannot find name current user. Oh, we have to import that like this, right? Or up here. Is current user, is it use context or user context? Already did that one. Use context probably. I think it was that. Cannot find name current user. Only because we have so many to go through, I'm going to use ChatGPT, okay? I was going to, take my time, which we could do, but for matter of speed, let's drop this one in there too, because we have a lot of files to go through, bro. Thanks. Can you now fix this one in the same way? It should remember, and then just be able to plug everything in for us. Certainly, it looks like this component is for creating a new project, and it needs to incorporate context for the current user. Since user context has been restructured, we'll update the create project form component to use user context and tenant context to access the current user's information and tenant details. Here's the updated create project form. I think I have those. Use navigate. Yup. I just added use context. Import tenant context. We did not do that. That might be the one I forgot. I don't even know if that was in the other one. Export default function create project form is open. That's the same. Existing use state and hooks. Yup. Toast. Navigate. Const tenant ID and const current user. This is why we couldn't find the user. That was my bad. It was that. There it is. Now see it went away. Handle submit event prevent default setting true. If, and then now it's going to the right, or wait, not, that's for the error screen. If not current, like if the user is not there or no tenant ID, then it's gonna do user not found. Everything else is the same except for this. Current. See, we're just changing the references, right? Because I had to change the whole context. So I like pulled the rug from out under the project, and everywhere now where user was being used needs to be changed. All right, everything else, I believe we have no more errors for that one. Next, task form dot index dot tsx. So let's see, should we do this real quick on our own or just copy and paste it in there? I can't even see the chat, by the way. I have to click here and then just started using ChatGPT last week for the first time. Word, bro. Welcome to the club. Completely game changing. Still developing your skill set and portfolio, but with ChatGPT as a coding tool, you feel unstoppable. You are. Yeah, I use it like exactly that same way, right? What? Man, there's even more, dude. I haven't even because I also want to still learn. Like, my knowledge is so low. I feel like I really want to be able to kind of sit at the table with the 10-year guys and be able to talk to them in their language. So that's why I'm scared to use too many AI tools, but I am a supporter, obviously, right? And what Tim helped me to think about with it, this one video I was watching that he made, he was saying that we're almost like a new generation of coders, and the name for us is centaurs, which I thought, not only does that sound cool, but what that means is it's people who use chat AI as they code. You know, there's coders who don't, and then there's coders who do. And the ones who do, it's almost like we just have another like a robotic arm. Like, and then it's gonna even eventually be where, because the analogy that he used to explain why this is a thing, only use AI tools once you know what you're doing. Right. See, that's where I messed up at. I went backwards. But once you do, now you unlocked a whole nother level. But he was saying how with chess, at first, all of the artificial intelligences for chess was beating all of our top grandmasters and stuff like that, right? They could beat everybody. Yeah, see that video, bro, that helped me understand and be more confident with this. How the chess masters were beating the regular people, the best that we have. But once those same grandmasters took control of AI and played against the AI, now they're unstoppable. They won. It unlocked, when we collaborate with AI, it unlocks another level of, you know, capability where it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be like, you know, imposter syndromed, because you could still build and you have speed and, you know, you can always learn more still. I think that that's gonna be the cheat code, is as long as we don't get complacent and don't feel like we don't need to learn just because we have AI. Because you have AI, you still need to learn. You still need to know your shit just as much as everyone else. That's good. Yeah, see, you doing your due diligence with me in courses, I just did not learn from them as much as I should. Like now with no course, it's like I'm putting myself through my own course now, just because every time that I feel like I don't understand something, I'm just really zooming in on it and actually writing it down and trying to think it through more so than just agreeing and being like, okay, cool, that's CSS, and just typing it in. Just like when I was in school, I did the same thing. Like, you know, when you're in school, you can kind of like bullshit your way through without even really understanding it. If you have a good memory, you just remember what to put on the test. I used to do that, and now I did that to myself with the courses. But it's like, nah, when it comes down to it, you really have to actually know, like, and understand how these things work. So our next one is this task form one. Let's see if I feel like it might be faster just to do this than me going through and replacing everything. I should race it right now and see, like, thanks. Now can you do this one as well? And let's see when we do it, who's gonna finish first? Because this replaces here. Wait, and I'm already, it was more than one, wasn't it? It was also use get user. And how did we add that in the other one? Because we didn't add it here. Oh yeah, it was a variable down there. All right, use get user, and see, it's already got what I need right here. Use state, synthetic event, use context. Use context. User context and tenant context need to be in here. Right there. Delete. If I delete this one, I'm losing use get user, but I think we're not using that anyway. Go down a little bit more. There's our props. Task form is right there with other use state hooks. Toast, and now we need these two. This is the user context and the tenant context right here. Copy and paste that here, like so. If current user, and then that was it. Oh wait, nope, that too. Down at the bottom, current user. Current user. And then now let me read through the comments here just to make sure. Created by, use current user for user context at created by. Use tenant ID from tenant context. I don't think I added that one. Oh, we did. Yeah. Right. As omit task. Now, what about all this other stuff? Is that good? Rest of the task data? Yeah. Okay. Just want to make sure. Ensure that the use context and tenant context are provided higher in the component tree, so this component has access to them. Additionally, verify that you've correctly handling the user and tenant information within your application data. Okay, yeah, that we're gonna check that all later. Save. Now create work item form. Create work item form. That's in work item forms. Thanks. Now this one is next. FlexBot Foggy. Word. if y'all want, while I'm doing this, I could put a little React talk up here, because this is about to get real repetitive. I'm just gonna be doing that same thing, copy and pasting that for a while. While I do that, let's listen to a React talk here. Whoops. Trying to find a good one. How about promises, async, and await? No, that's just JavaScript. Let's stick to React. Or should we do back end? Let's stay on topic here. We're going to do the newer introduction to React. Let's go right here.
All right. React.
Stop the music.
For handling your UI.
We're about to get you started with your course, bro.
Good night, everybody. Hope you do well. Have a great weekend. I will see you on Sunday for the continuation of the super review. That's it. All right, everybody. Let's figure out who we're gonna raid. Let's see who's online. No, please don't leave. React is a library for handling.
I'm gonna be in the other screen copying and pasting stuff.
UI.
Wait, is it
very simply
is my stuff in the way?
Allows you to write components,
because
which
I
you can
could
reuse and extend when needed,
delete,
and it does not handle anything,
or at
else.
least hide
So
this
I
for
used
now.
a couple big words that we're going to break down tonight, but it's simply a library for handling your UI. Bruh. That's it. What the heck is a UI? That's my first question in the chat. What's a UI? It's a user interface. Exactly. It's a user interface. It's the thing that our users are going to interface with to use your application, right? And so if we look at an older UI, this is kind of Facebook's old UI. For folks that aren't hip yet, Facebook was the folks that kind of initially helped develop and popularize React, and they used it to solve some very real problems that they were facing as their code base got larger. Okay, so what we're looking at right now is Facebook's old UI, like their older user interface. This is actually one of my past cohort members' Facebook page. They've given me permission to use it. I've just blanked out anything that like mattered. That's why there's a lot of like missing stuff. All right. Yeah. Cool. Now, when it comes to when it comes to React being a library that handles your UI, right? Somebody asked, what's the difference between a library and a framework? You could think of a library as kind of just a set of tools, but with no like rhyme or reason for how you should use those tools. There is no opinionated stuff behind how you use those tools. It's not bringing in other scaffolding for you to use those tools. It's just a collection of kind of like methods, right? It's a collection of things that enable you to do some stuff. We'll go deeper into that on Tuesday, but that's kind of it. Like a framework's going to give you a lot more. And some people kind of argue whether or not React is technically a framework or not, but we'll be able to have that argument better once we learn the basics. So let's save that argument for Tuesday. Yeah, that's a big code weenie, big code weenie argument, but I don't think we're ready to have that argument yet. So let's learn a little bit and then we can have the argument. Cool. All right. So Facebook is, I keep saying Facebook. React is simply a library for handling your UI, and Facebook was running into some significant trouble as their app was getting bigger, as their UI was handling more stuff or seeing more stuff. So far, we've built some very simple UIs, and we introduced an architecture pattern that we've been using recently. What's the big architecture pattern that we've been using recently that helps keep our applications organized? Yeah, it's been MVC. And if we're worried about the UI or the user interface, like the things that our user is actually interacting with to do things on our application, what part of the MVC structure is React kind of going to be existing in? Yeah, it's going to be existing in this view area. We're actually going to introduce an extension to MVC, which kind of adds a slightly different twist to it. But for now, we're just happy to exist in the view territory, right? Our user interface is always going to be handled by our views. How we get into things like view model, we'll save for later. But the idea right now is that Facebook needed a better way to handle their views. And so let's take a look at Facebook's kind of older interface when this kind of stuff started kicking off. So here's Facebook's old user interface. Let's take a look at all this stuff that's actually happening real quick. We have posts, and posts kind of have all their different complexities, likes, time, all this other fun stuff. We had stories that were popping off. We had creating posts. I don't know if statuses were still technically a thing. We had marketplace and watch and knowing whether or not there were new things to watch or new things in the marketplace. We had all of our groups and whether or not there were new posts in those groups. You could explore new things and see as those pages were going up or down. You had your events that were coming through, and sometimes it'd be more or less events. You had information on the pages that you created. You could see all the things that recently happened. You could see the games that your friends were playing, and you could jump into those friend pages again. You could keep track of whether or not your friends were online or not. You could see all your events coming through, your friend requests, all your stuff. All your stuff on this page. And so if we are thinking about kind of our current understanding of how we handle our views, this is a colossal, unmaintainable, hot garbage dumpster fire of a mess, right? Because all of this stuff is going to be in like one what?
One page.
Like the content's probably in like one big ass HTML file, or in our case right now, one EJS file. There's so much logic happening. Look at all this logic, right? Like, is there new stuff? Is the likes going up? Are there new posts? Do you have new notifications? Do you have new friend requests? Like, if we're going to be handling all that pretty much like conditional logic, right? That would probably all be in one singular what right now with the way we've been doing things. Like one JS file, right? Imagine having all of this logic, like all this client-side logic, whether or not it should be red or gray or green or numbers going up, going down, like all that stuff. If we're thinking about it right now, having seen and played with these methods,
my bad.
If we are thinking about kind of our current understanding of how we handle our views, all this logic is all over the place. All this style is probably in one CSS file until we start breaking out. So there's just too much. If I take a developer and I tell them to go and fix something on this page, it's over, right? It's over. To find what to fix, to be afraid not to break anything. Like, go back to kind of even like our object-oriented lectures, right? Like, is any of this stuff abstracted? Are we encapsulating the right stuff? Is this maintainable? Is it easy for new developers to jump in and make changes and not lose sleep at night? And the answer is like, no. Where we're at in our journey right now, the answer is just a big, fat no. But what I want you to do is I want you to take just a slightly deeper look at this. And what we're going to notice is that a lot of this stuff is being reused. Can you see what I mean by that? Like, I feel like a lot of this stuff is kind of repeating itself, right? So we're going to have posts, and there's probably posts on this page, like your home page, other people's pages. Are those posts across different pages really fundamentally any different? Not really. And are stories that appear on this page versus some other place really any different? No. And so what React really introduced first is an idea of a component. And in a component really changes the game when you start to look at a lot of these UIs. A lot of these UIs are using the same thing over and over again, right? If we look at these shortcuts that kind of have the numbers going up, it's almost the exact same component as the Explore. So we could figure out our logic, we could figure out our styling, we could figure out kind of our content and store it all in one component, and then be able to reuse it where we need it to, right? And so this idea of breaking things down into components really does add to the maintainability of our code. And what I mean by that is that, one, we can keep all of our stuff together, right? We can keep our logic, our styling, our content into these components, and then these components can be reused not only across the page, but across our entire application, and maybe even across other applications. Is a post on Facebook fundamentally any different than a post on Instagram? Right? Facebook owns both Facebook and Instagram. Are they fundamentally any different? Now, no, I'm not saying this is how it actually works at Facebook, but the idea is there, right? Like, we could write our post component once and then reuse it across our application and maybe even across other applications. And then the beautiful thing is, if any other engineer wanted to come and fix how posts work, they know exactly where to go. They're not jumping through a hot mess of a JavaScript file to find the logic for likes, right? They're not jumping through a hot mess of 10,000 lines of CSS to change how a post looks, right? We can store all of that logic, all of that style, all of that content into one reusable, easy to maintain component. And so as we start to build out our applications, what we want to be able to do is see components everywhere. If we could start breaking down our applications into reusable components, not only does it like make your life easier when you have to maintain or update or work with other engineers that want to do the same, but it also accelerates your development because you could just reuse them. On 2 classes ago, I showed you how to like make your MVPs stylistically look good very quickly. What did I use to get that landing page done in like 3 seconds? It was components that were using Tailwind, right? And so I was literally able to like copy and reuse my components, and I had a nice header, I had a nice hero, I had a nice footer, and boom, 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 copy and paste it, and I'm done. Right now, this is kind of like a very simple introduction to it, but these reusability of components, the maintainability of the components, can make our lives a lot easier, especially as our UIs start to get more complex. So tonight we're going to talk about components. We're going to talk about something called props, we're going to talk about something called state. And when we use all three of these things combined, we can build UIs that handle our views that really enable us to build faster, build more maintainable code, and make it so that we can not have a hot dumpster fire of a mess of client-side JavaScript, a mess of client-side CSS, and all this other stuff that's coming through. So what I want to do now is we're at the top of the hour, so we're going to take our break. When we come back from the break, we're going to kind of dive into this idea of components a little bit deeper. And then I'm going to introduce something called props, which really does add flexibility to our components. And then we'll bring state in, and then we're going to see some real examples, play around with some real code, and hopefully walk away tonight having a feeling about what React might do for us as we continue on our development career. So we're talking about components. Let's take a look at some of the components that Facebook might have been implementing here. And let's kind of think about it, what it'd be like without components, just again for a quick second, right? Let's go ahead and take a look at this. What are these red dots used, like what are these red dots used to mean as we continue on our development? What was that for? Yeah, it was like new stuff, right? Like new things were either there to be watched or there's something new in the marketplace. And so if we were doing this like originally, somewhere in our JavaScript file was like the code to change that from gray to red. There was probably some sort of Ajaxy stuff going on when we look at any of these updates. Like there's some sort of way that we're like actually getting new information and updating it. There's probably like, if we were doing it like the way we've been doing it, there's like, would there be a page refresh? Imagine if you're refreshing the page for all of this crap, right? Like, no, that can't happen. If we look at something like the bell too, right? Like think about that for a second. That bell could be like that dark blue. It could be white. It could have a number. The number has to keep going up, right? Like that's a lot of JavaScript to keep track of. And if we were doing it the way we've been doing it, this would all be like in a singular file. And imagine trying to maintain all of this crap, right? So the beautiful thing about components, as Facebook's UI got bigger and bigger, more and more not maintainable by the easiest stretch of the imagination, components through React gave them some really beautiful things. Like if we think about this kind of box here as a component, we can keep all of this logic about the dots. We can keep all this logic about kind of when they show, when they go from gray to red, when all that stuff happens. And better yet, these dots can be their own component that is reused in a larger, let's say like feed component or something like that, right? So we can actually start having components that exist inside of other components or extend, right? And so we can really start to think about each piece of this UI as a component. And that component could have all of its logic. It could have all of its CSS, everything in one place. Now, some folks start to say, Leon, well, this kind of seems like it violates what? Like, Leon, you're telling me that you're combining like your content, your style, your JavaScript into this one entity called a component. We're starting to get pretty close to violating separation of concerns. Exactly. And so what was the goal of separation of concerns? What was the goal? Kind of sussly. What was the goal of separation of concerns?
Oh no. Projects is under.
Thank you, Blah. It was organization,
personal
right?
data.
It was adding maintainability to our code. It was making, exactly, Blah, our life easier. It was making it so that when other developers came and worked on our code, they knew where to go and what to do. And the real purpose behind separation of concerns and why I introduced it so early on is because I want you to think critically about the code that you write, right? Like the reason why separation of concerns is introduced at that point is because I need you to start thinking like a developer. What's going to make your life easier? What is going to make the life of the other developers you're working with, their lives easier? And as we add more stuff to our developmental skill set, we might need to revisit some of these paradigms. And so in essence, I mean, if you really think about it, you got, right? You got, right? Like it's where we started.
I'll be right back.
But there might be some other things that might be a little bit better now we've been a little bit further along down the timeline, right? And so when it comes to separation of concerns, yes, it was about adding maintainability. It was about adding organization. It's about separating presentation and business logic, and all that stuff is still happening, right? All that stuff is still happening with components. It's just a different way of going about it. And so will it actually be separated out into individual files? It depends on how you go about building out your components. Some folks will have everything in their component. It will have the style, it will have the logic, it will have everything in one place. Sometimes people will separate out into individual files that are all associated with one component. It'll be up to you. So, and the team that you join about how together things are, but you're still adhering to it just in a slightly different way. And at the end, it's still achieving the same goals of that maintainability, that organization, having new developers know where to go when they sit down. When they sit down, and the big sweeping change is that these dots now have to be squares, right? They know where to go, right? They know where to go, right? So that's the idea of components going forward. Now, as we start to think about components, we start to think about the reusability of our components, I want you to pay attention to some things that were happening in this UI. Over here, there was something that would show up when your friends were logged on. What would show up when any of your contacts were online? You better remember what would show up there before Messenger or things like that. Yeah. We would have a green dot that showed up when that user was online. Now, a question for you. In terms of like logic, like there's an update that has happened, there's somebody online, or there is something new to watch, or there's something new in the marketplace. Is there really any difference between these dots and these red dots? Give me a little creative freedom here. Hey, Jesus. Hey, we're in your territory tonight. If y'all have React questions, just go to Nick on Discord. Hey, Jesus. They're there for you. Yeah, there's no difference, right? There's real no difference between the green dots that show up here and the red dots that show up here, except for one change. And that change is the color. So the beauty of React components is that you can pass in what we call props. And props give flexibility,
And we're back
to your components. There's nothing fundamentally different between the dots that show up for new things in the marketplace and the dots that show up when somebody's logged on, except for the color. And so with props, we could pass the color we care about into our components, right? So the component that we're using over here, we would pass in a prop of red, and the component that we're using over here, we would pass in the prop of green. We could literally reuse the exact same component and just pass in different props. We get all the reusability, we get all the maintainability of having just to maintain one component, that is these dots, but we get the flexibility of saying, well, over here the dots should be red, and over here the dots should be green. It's not something we have to go and like fundamentally change our CSS. It's nothing we have to go and like fundamentally change any logic. We just need to pass in a freaking color so it knows to be red for this component and green for that component. That's it. So components have this wonderful bit of reusability. If somebody needs to edit how dots function across our entire application, they go to our dots component, right? These dots are going to show up here, 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 maybe 20 other places across our application. We're going to need these freaking dots. But in some places, we're going to want them to be red. Some places we're going to want them to be green. Some places we're going to want them to be blue. We don't have to want to rebuild a whole new component. We don't have to rebuild all that logic, redo all that CSS. We just want to be able to say it should be red, green.
My bad. I had to pause that for a second because I have to like think about this one right here, and I need to look at our backend real quick to make sure that this is accurate. I'm doing a complex query here into a subcollection, into an object that is nested within a subcollection. So if I'm gonna query into the projects, which is inside of the personnel, which is inside the tenant profile, and the project's ID, which will always be unique. So we need to just make sure that project ID is a key inside the project's map, which is it is not. I mean, I guess it is this, right? Is this what the... Let me just see if this will give further context here, because I'm pretty sure... I don't know if you can reference this from project's ID though. Like, it has to be the project's ID, but these strings have no name for this field. It's just, yes, it's an array. It's just an array of strings. But can you reference this array of strings within the project's array from project's ID? Is my question. Let me explain that to this. So projects is an array of strings within the personnel data object within the tenant profiles subcollection, but I'm not sure if you can reference the strings within the project's array by project ID. Although it is strings, it just says 0 and 1 as per the screenshot. Okay, the project ID is unique across all tenant profiles. No, it's definitely not. I mean, unique as in, yeah, it is actually. The personnel object and its project's map are properly included to support the query, hopefully. It's important to note that Firestore queries on maps require the map's fields are indexed. If you haven't set up such an index. Okay, we can continue.
Green, blue. And so when we use the component, we can pass that color into it via props and get that flexibility. Cool. Could you implement dark mode, light mode across the whole app simply with props? Possibly. Yeah, let's think about it that way. Yeah. Now, let's think about another like really cool, like key thing to Facebook. When we're looking at our posts, right? We're thinking about posts. There are posts on Facebook and there are also posts on Instagram. We said earlier that a post on Facebook was fundamentally exactly the same thing as a post on Instagram. But there's probably just like a few key differences. What's probably the biggest difference between a post on Instagram and a post on Facebook? there's really only one big difference, right? They both have like text, they both have like a text. They both have like images, right? Like they both have like almost the same stuff. But the real big difference in my mind is like on Facebook, it's a thumbs up for liking, and it's a heart on Instagram. Right?
List of projects.
Fundamentally, they're the same thing, right? Maybe a little bit different in terms of like text or image or something like that. But fundamentally, a post on Facebook should operate
What up,
the
bro?
exact same as a post on Instagram.
I was locked in.
The likes are
trying to figure
icon.
I'm trying to figure something out, man. It's a little tricky. Queries
So
of documents within documents.
To keep the same component across two different code bases that have fundamentally the same logic, the same kind of styling almost, right? We just want likes and to look different on one versus the other. What could we use to pass in a thumbs up or a heart? Yeah. We could use our props on Facebook to pass in a thumbs up. And we could use our props on Instagram to pass in a heart. So we now not only get the ability to reuse the component throughout our application on Facebook, right? Like we could have a post here on the homepage, the newsfeed, etc. But maybe we could even reuse components across different applications as well. And this is something that I do a lot. For me, I have a lot of components that I have written that do key things for me. And when I'm building out a new application, I can just go yoink that component, plop it into my React code base, and I know it has everything that I need. I know that it has all the logic, all the styling, has all the content that I need. And the ability to reuse that anywhere I want is huge. It really speeds up my development.
I was actually thinking that with the project that I'm working on right now, like it would be the perfect blueprint for me to build something else similar to this with React front end and Firebase back end, where users are signing in and doing different things like that. Like I could use this to really jumpstart like some personal project or something like that. I have everything I need.
So if you build a component, you can just reuse it over and over again. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. Because if we really look, right, like if we really look at this UI, is there anything different between shortcuts and explore? Like look at it. Is there anything different between shortcuts and explore?
So I can access it using projects index 0 and 1 and using the map function to return the value. Okay.
Right.
Cool.
They have slightly different icons, but it seems like they have all the same functionality. They have all the same style. They have all the same logic, right? Like they still have like the numbers going up.
Using the project ID.
So if we were to do this originally, right, we might have JavaScript handling each one of these.
Is that automatically when you make an array that is within an object and then you're setting them to strings or whatever is within that array?
Like numbers that are going up, right? We might even have...
So you can always use map to map over an array.
Two different sets of them for the different areas, but we can start to see this as a component. So maybe this number going up is a component. The kind of list of link is a component. And so we can just reuse these components wherever we want. We kind of just like copy and paste, and boom, we got a new component. We might have to pass in slightly different text. These texts might be props that we're passing in, and we'll figure out ways to do that later on. But it's still the same thing that we're just reusing. And any other page that needs this type of thing, we can reuse that component over and over again. And yes, we can have components inside of components, right? And that makes it even more maintainable. Because if I want to work on these numbers going up, right? Think about this. I want to work on these numbers going up. There's two ways we could approach it. The old way, I wanted to work on these numbers going up. These numbers going up were probably intimately tied to this content, right? There was something in my JavaScript file that was targeting this specific place in the DOM. There was some JavaScript that I was like using that like made that number work with that content, or at least that place in my content.
The thing I like about this is, at least the stage that we are at with this project, I'm just assuming that once we get the foundation and the structure of the document model and how the hooks will interact and change everything for our like edit forms and different things like that, once it's set up, we really should be on autopilot from there for the most part. I just assume maybe in like a month or two, then we're just going to do cosmetic stuff or see what other features to roll out to evolve the project from there. I'm just thinking that like the worst of the times is in the beginning when you're preparing to launch.
What if I decided, you know what, Leon? I don't want these numbers anymore. Back in the day, what would we have done? Like if I don't want the numbers anymore, what would I have done back in the day?
Based on your data
Well, now
structure,
I'm going to my I'm going to my HTML or my EJS.
I just want to see how many files I have left to change. Use fetch projects. 1 personnel page. Personnel page. Okay, no, that's just another. That's the same one. Fetch projects. Wait, 1, 2, 3. That's the same one. Oh, it's not that bad. 3, 4. Okay, it's really not that much actually. At least for now. Cool. Some of these were like multiple for the same page, like all 3 of these. So it's not that bad. We might be done like almost soon.
Content, like the HTML, like whatever I'm using for my templating
Use
language.
fetch projects.
Then I'm like trolling through my JavaScript to find all the logic that was controlling each of those numbers going up. Maybe there were some like fetches that were pulling data from somewhere. Like
hook.
So now like I got to go through all my content in my HTML. I have to go through all my JavaScript. I might even have to go through like a lot of my CSS to pull out all those styles that I was using. I probably had specific classes for it. So that was a big pain in the butt. But if this was a component, right? If this was a component and that component was just being used inside of another component, all I have to do is remove that component and I'm done. I literally just delete one line. I delete one line and it all goes away. I don't have to worry about going through all these individual files. And if I want to add it back, I just add one line and it's back, right? So when we're talking about like the maintainability of our code, like React can really change your life, right? If all your logic, your style, all that stuff is contained in one little area, the ability to add and remove stuff, the ability to reuse stuff across your application becomes huge. Yeah. And we're going to see some examples of the components in a second. We're going to see some examples of the component. Don't worry. We're going to work through it. You're going to be able to see kind of all these things in action. I'm going to show you props in action. I'm going to show you the components in action and how we can reuse them. All right. So we talked about components bringing maintainability to our code, the ability to reuse components over and over again, which saves time and development effort. We talked about having props, which enable us to pass individual things into our components so that we can reuse them. We want something to be red versus green. We don't have to rewrite a whole new component. We can have that flexibility by passing in props. And then there is one last thing that we have to add, and it's something called state. You can think about each component having an object that exists inside that component that we can access. So state is just an object on a component that we can access. Now, the really cool thing about this object that exists inside the component is that when the state changes, right? When that object inside the component changes, well, the component
Reacts.
reacts. We have components. We can add a flexibility to our components by passing in new things via props. But each of our components
Chest
can
break.
also have an object that we're going to call state. And when that state changes, our components can react. Now, let's think about it. Let's think about it. Friend logs on, right? Friend logs on. This dot component could have a state that says, are they online? Right now, are they online is false. As soon as they log on, that state changes to true. And since the state changed, that component's going to what?
Oh shit.
Going to react. Exactly. It's going to react. It's going to go from gray to green. All that logic we need to know what happens when the state changes, the component already knows, right? The component already knows what to do when state changes. That's the beauty of building out these components, is we get to put in all the logic that, hey, when that state changes, this is how I need you to react, right? Let's look at something else. Let's look at this bell. This bell probably has a state of what? You figure out what the state might be here? Yeah, it probably has a state. Remember, state's just an object, right? Let's just keep it very simple for right now. Let's just think about state as an object. It probably has a count property. When that count property
warm up
goes
game.
from
That doesn't
16
count.
to 17, what does that component do? It reacts, right? It knows what to do. It knows how to go from 16 to 17. Better yet, let's think about if it was 0, right? Let's say there's no notifications, right? Let's say there was no notifications and it was just a dark gray or dark blue bell, right? There's no red box. There's no coloring. As soon as it goes from 0 to 1, that component knows how to react. It knows to, all right, now make it white. Now bring in the red box. Now put in a number of 1, right?
He's going to take
all
this.
All of that is contained in the component. No chasing down some JavaScript file.
How can I save it?
No wild conditional logic that's just all over the place.
Shit.
No chasing down our style changes. It's all contained in that component. And
that doesn't count.
When the state changed, it knows how to react. If we were going back to the Dark Ages and we had all this in a JavaScript file, right? All these little bits of logic, all this conditional logic, all this stuff in a singular file is bad news. We would start messing up our conditionals. We would start messing up like what happens when we get new information. It just becomes not maintainable. And so the idea of bringing components into the mix does quite a few things. Components bring maintainability. They bring reusability. The ability to have props brings flexibility to the components that we've already written. So we don't wind up having a bunch of very similar components. We can have one and kind of the unique changes we need for each we can pass in.
Take that.
And then the last thing is this state. And each component can have its own state. And when that state changes, the component knows how to react. That logic, that style, everything is contained in that one area. We don't have to go chase it down. We don't have to worry about when we remove components that it's going to break some other places of our
Oh,
code
Lord.
base. We can add and remove them as we see fit.
That would have been checkmate. I
Does it
almost
make
got him.
sense why we might use components, right? Is that
I'm just
kind
gonna
of
take
why we might use
sacrifice.
components?
Oh my gosh. If I go here,
Cool. All right. That's the goal for tonight. The goal for tonight is just to understand, all right, components might make our life a lot easier as we start to develop more and more complex UI. The reusability, the maintainability,
Here,
the ability to
here.
not have to worry about what happens.
Oh,
when our
1
state
second.
changes, right? Like all that's been
no.
coded out for us, right?
Bro, I
We-
had
we
that
can
one.
just add and remove them as we see fit. Awesome.
Chess is hard.
What I want to do now is I want to talk through some of kind of the important bits and bobs when it comes to React. And we're going to see some examples, and then we'll end class. There's one other thing too, since we're just talking about state real quick, and we're going to see it again in a little bit. But think about all these things where state is changing, right? Think about all these things where state is changing. State change. Let's just count out. State change, 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 change. Probably each of the third state changing. Like change, 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 change.
I need to
I'm gonna stop
castle.
here. Like all these things that have to change.
I'm just gonna go here. Wait.
If
Back
we were
it up.
doing it how we've been doing it, that's
That's
also
fine.
a lot of what?
Go
It's kind of
here.
I know it's a stretch here, but it's also a lot of what's happening on the page.
Can I go
If we
there?
were to do
No.
this in the end. Yeah. Exactly, Shadow
Here
Song.
first.
It's a lot of refreshing. We don't
Now
have to refresh
this.
anymore. And so the beautiful thing about React is it has something called the virtual DOM.
Dom.
It has something called the virtual DOM. So what we're actually doing as all of these things are changing, like as all this state is changing and our components are reacting,
Oh my god.
we don't actually have to refresh the whole page. And better yet, we only
Just
wind
move.
up refreshing the small, tiny piece that actually needs to be refreshed. So we're not repainting
running out of
the whole
time.
DOM, the whole DOM tree. We're using something called the virtual DOM to compare the actual DOM versus the change that we want. And we're making a patch to the actual DOM that just changes this little piece. And so I really like from some of the reading that we're going to do, there's a really good example
Oh, look at
that
that.
we're going to see like live. And I'm going to show you through
No.
some cool Chrome tricks.
Time.
How we can actually see that the whole page
He's
is
gonna
not
go there.
refreshing. It's just the small things that are.
No.
Cool.
I just can't play fast on the computer, bro. I need my phone.
Now,
Dang, that was two
we
in a
have
row.
some-
I gotta at least get one win.
We have some warnings I need to make. We're about to go into some more technical terms. We're about to see some code. I don't really need you to understand this right now. Right? I don't really need you to understand these bigger concepts. I don't need you to understand the one-way data flow versus two-way data binding or any of that crap. For now, let's just understand what components are, what's some props, what's some state, and we'll take it from there. All right. When we're using React, there's kind of two crucial APIs that we're kind of consuming. React, which contains all the APIs for like how we actually create components, and then React DOM, which tells us how to render those components to the DOM. So React actually gives us the API for creating the individual components, and then React DOM enables us to actually take those components and put them into the DOM. Like that, like we have
There
to
we go.
have some mechanisms for doing those two things. And so these two APIs are what enable us to do it, and we're going to see them in some of our code. There's also another big component of React, and it's JSX. JSX is just a syntax extension to JavaScript, and it's really just a shortcut for this specific API. And what it does is it just helps us generate the stuff that eventually spits out HTML. So
Whoa.
you can kind of think of it almost like our EJS. It's going to look an awful lot like JavaScript, but some things are going to be a little suspect and a little bit different, and we're going to be noticing like some quirks to it, just like our EJS kind of looked like our HTML, but it really wasn't. At the end of the day, we're just using it to eventually build our component and spit out the actual HTML. Cool. We'll go deeper with it next week. There's another really good resource that I really love for React.
All right, 2 in a row.
Are going to be kind of built off of some of the stuff that comes in this overview. So React.express is just like another resource that I like for React, especially for some of the older stuff that we'll be covering. We talked about 2 big things that come to React already. We talked about props. You can just think about props as arguments that are being passed into our component.
If he goes,
just like when we have functions and we're able to pass in arguments to a function, you can think about your props as the exact same thing. It's a way of, right? It's the same way of passing in values into these components. Right? That's it. And then we also have state, which is just an object that's built into the component. And when that object changes, our component reacts and, importantly, re-renders. Right? So that reacting also includes the re-rendering of that component using that virtual DOM to make that actual change in the DOM. So if we can kind of absorb kind of some of these very high level concepts, we'll be in a good spot. Remember, that virtual DOM is a way of us kind of looking at the DOM as it stands.
I'm sure
right
how your code is, but ask ChatGPT
looking
to
at the
map it
DOM
on the
as
project
it
gateway.
stands and saying, I
Yeah,
want
man, I had to
specific changes,
get these bugs out
and
the
being
way.
able to make.
It's just so tedious. And the problem is though that, so just to complete the story a little bit, I inherited a MVP. I work for a startup that was built by a different developer than is currently on the project. And I'm the only one on the team writing code currently, but we are still managed by another company. And they had a whole different document structure for the project that's different than the one that we inherited, that the original person who coded it created it. So because of that, redoing the iUser object into a whole different structure, I'm right now going through and having to rewrite and recompile, and configure things with all the different hooks that are hooking into this information, changing it, every page that accesses it. I'm probably making it sound more than it is because it's really not that bad.
Without having to re-render the full DOM. The way it works is that we keep the
just time consuming. But I think this video is pretty much about to wrap up. We can get on another one, can't we? Oh wait, no, he's still going. He's gonna go into, after the virtual DOM, do some props showing how that works with children components and stuff, I think.
real DOM and a virtual DOM. We make all of our changes on the virtual DOM, and based on what we change, we say,
chess is addicting, man.
It's very simple.
Since I'm on a little win streak, before I get back to the errors, I'm just gonna play until I lose, which is probably gonna be the next one. I probably just jinxed myself.
As we start to see these things, the state changing, our components reacting and needing to re-render, we take advantage of this virtual DOM to make the specific individual changes that we need to make. Cool. That's all the big stuff I'm going to throw out to you for tonight. I don't really want to go too much deeper because I think you got to go through the reading, you got to go through the materials first, and then you will come back on Tuesday to go deeper into all of these kind of higher level concepts.
Whoa, he's going for that.
Do I currently work with React all the time?
Or that. That's
I think
fine.
it's something that you should have.
I could do this. This is a little scary.
Right? You should have in your repertoire.
If I go here, we're good, right?
You might think to get a job.
I just can't castle.
It's good to understand these high level concepts. It's good to understand what it might bring to your
But neither
code.
can he.
right? But I don't need you to go much deeper than the
Never
materials
mind.
that I'm sharing.
This way.
So if you go through this class and our classes next week, you go through the 2 courses I shared, Brad's course and the Kent C. Dodds course. That's enough.
I'm gonna have to take that.
You really don't need more than that for right now, because there's a good chance when you get to your job, they might not actually use React. So you're better off spending your time right now, especially as we go into the hunt, finishing up your 100 hours project, investing in your data structures algorithms, making sure you're doing your code wars and all the other things.
Oh, you messed up.
The basics are enough to get the job. And as you figure out what your local kind of job market is asking for, you might invest a little bit more in React. You might invest a little bit more in things like Vue.
Oh, I messed up.
Whatever it might be.
He didn't see it.
But I just want you to see the basics of what one of these UI.
I'm running out of time, bro.
For you, and you don't really need to go super deep on it to get the job. Cool.
I ran out of time. Damn.
All right.
See, I
another
jinxed
warning.
myself.
We're about to be baddies.
All right, let's get back to it.
We're about to see some bad code. It's all right. We're baddies. We're seeing bad
pause.
code. It's all right. All right. So we're going to look through some examples. And these examples come from the reading that I assigned. And there's 3 of them that are on Code Sandbox. And so we're going to look through these different examples on Code Sandbox. We're going to play with them. And I just need you to let these concepts marinate in your brain the rest of tonight, over the weekend. I really do need you to start thinking about components everywhere. You can look at anything in your life as components, and everything that you're doing, please, over the next weekend,
projects.
just think about components, right? Like when you're hungry and you're going into the refrigerator, you can see your refrigerator of a component. And your refrigerator is made up of a bunch of other components that are inside your refrigerator, right? You might have almond butter inside your refrigerator. Almond butter is a component that exists inside your refrigerator component. And your almond butter, right, might have a prop that you passed in of crunchy or creamy, right? That you might have a crunchy almond butter, you might have a creamy almond butter, right? And when you eat it, your state might change, right? You might get bigger. I don't know, right? I know it's silly, but I really do want you to try this. I really do want you just to take a few moments throughout your weekend to say, all right, what's in front of me?
Let's listen to that one video again. React concepts in 12 minutes. I like how he kind of goes in a faster way, goes over more. I like how Leon Noel gets in detail, but then he also explains things simply. But then this is more speed, but covers more concepts. We're going to keep drilling it in. Keep drilling it
actually mean. Let's start from
into
the
our
beginning with
brains.
components. Components are the building blocks of every React app. They allow us to make all the visible parts of our applications, like buttons, inputs, or even entire pages. Just like Legos, you can use components as many times as you want. Every React component is a JavaScript function that returns markup. But since React is a JavaScript library, React components don't return HTML markup. They actually return something called JSX, which is JavaScript in disguise. JSX is optional, but the alternative way to make user interfaces is with the function createElement, which gets annoying to write pretty fast, so everyone just uses JSX. Since JSX is JavaScript, you can't write attributes like you would in HTML. You have to write them in the camel case style. That means HTML attributes like class become class name. Unlike HTML, which is static and unchanging, the benefit of using React is that you can use dynamic JavaScript values in your JSX. If you have data, you can display it in your JSX using curly braces. Curly braces accept values like strings and numbers directly. You can use them to make your attributes dynamic, and you can style React elements using a JavaScript object within the curly braces. Since JavaScript functions can only return one thing, in React, you can only return one parent element from a component. So you can't do this without getting a big error. We could fix this by wrapping these components in a div, but maybe you don't want to add another element to the page. Instead, you can use an empty component called a React fragment. Okay, but what if I want to pass data into another component? For that, you use something called props. To make a prop, create a name on the component you want to pass data to and set it equal to some value. And that's it. You can then use that prop in the component you passed it to. Props refers to properties on an object, which is what you get in the parameters of each component. To use the prop, take it from the object like a normal JavaScript property. Think of them like custom attributes you can add to any component. So wait, can you pass anything as a prop? Yes, you can. You can even pass other components as props using the children prop. If you make opening and closing tags for a component, you can pass other components in between them. These passed components are called children, and you can access them on the children prop of the parent component. And it's great for something called composition, which is about organizing our React components in the most optimal way. The children prop is really useful for creating layout components when you want your children to have the same common layout. The key prop is another built-in prop to React. And no, unlike the name implies, it doesn't unlock anything interesting. The key prop is used so React can tell one component apart from another, usually when you're creating a list with the map function. A key is just a unique string or number to identify a component. You'll usually know when you need to add a key because React will warn you in the console. Fortunately, if you don't have a unique value for each item, you can always use the current index from the map function. But how does React take all my amazing code and make it display something in the browser? That process is called rendering. React does this for us, but it's important to know how it works because sometimes we can do a bad thing and cause it to infinitely re-render, which crashes our app. The way React knows how and when to render our application is using something called the virtual DOM, also known as the VDOM. Okay, but what does DOM mean? DOM stands for Document Object Model, which is what every browser uses to model all the HTML elements on a web page. And when you draw it out, it kind of looks like a tree. Here's the complete rendering process in React. If the state of our React app changes, then React updates the virtual DOM, which is quicker to update than the real DOM. Then, React uses a process called diffing to compare the updated virtual DOM to a previous version to see what's changed. Once it sees what's different, React uses a process called reconciliation to update the real DOM with the changes that it found. Whenever someone uses our app, tons of events take place like clicks, mouse movements, and key presses, many of which we need to detect. Event handling is how we take those user events and do something with them. React has a lot of built-in events such as onClick, onChange, and onSubmit. These three events are ones you'll probably use the most. If we want to alert users when a button is clicked, we would add the onClick prop to the button and connect it to a function that would show that alert. To manage data in our React apps, we need to use state. Not that kind of state, though. State is like a snapshot from a camera. It's a picture of our app at any given time. To manage state, we also can't use JavaScript variables. They don't cause our app to re-render. Instead, we use special functions like useState and useReducer. useState takes an argument that serves as the starting value of the state variable, which is likes in this example, and returns an array containing the state variable and a function to update that state. Using our button example, we could also update the number of times the button's been clicked with the update function, setClicks, and display it in the button with the state variable likes. Controlled components use state values to have more predictable behavior. Here's an example of a controlled component where the value typed into the input is being put into state and controlled by the state variable value. Here's how it works. The user types, and setValue puts what the user typed into state. The state value is then updated, and finally, the input uses that updated state as its value. Controlled components are a great pattern to use because if we want to change the component's behavior, we just need to change the state that controls it. useState is an example of a React hook. which allow us to hook into features such as state within function components. There are 5 main types of hooks. State hooks, like useState and useReducer, help you manage state within React components. Context hooks, such as useContext, let you use data pass through React context. Ref hooks, such as useRef, let you reference things like HTML elements. Effect hooks, like useEffect, let you connect with external systems like browser APIs. And performance hooks, like useMemo and useCallback, which can improve performance by preventing unnecessary work. You'll use all of these hooks at some point, but the majority of the time you'll likely use just 3 hooks in your React components: useState, useEffect, and useRef. When you think of the word purity, you might think of something like purified water. Purity is a term used to describe how React components should work, but this type of purity is more like how mathematical formulas are pure. Pure React components mean that the same input should always return the same output. To keep a React component pure, they should only return their JSX and not change any objects or variables that existed before rendering. The cup component in this example is impure because it changes the variable count during render, which exists outside the component. This leads to the JSX having the wrong output when it is used more than once. To help make sure we don't run into errors like this, we can use something called strict mode. Strict mode is a special component which tells us about mistakes as we develop our React apps. It's really convenient because it's just a component we usually wrap around our app component, and it'll tell us when we really shouldn't do something. But what if we need to do something outside our React app? Your app might need to talk with the browser API or make a request to a server. If you do have an external system, you're going to need a way to step outside of React. Effects are code that reach outside of our React application. Usually effects, also known as side effects, can be done within event handlers. For example, to make an HTTP request when you submit a form or click on a button. If you can't run your effects within an event handler, then you can run them using the useEffect hook. For example, a common pattern is to fetch data when components first load with the useEffect hook. Like effects, sometimes you want to step outside React and work directly with the DOM. To reference an actual DOM element, you can use what's called a ref. You can create a ref with the useRef hook, and to get access to a DOM element, use the ref prop on any React element. For some tasks, such as focusing an input, it's much easier to reference the actual DOM element instead of attempting to do it the React way. Context is a powerful way to pass prop data through your app's components. Most React apps have tons of nested components. To get data down multiple levels involves passing the same props through components that don't actually need it. Context lets us jump through the component tree and use data at any level without making props. To use context, you first create context in a parent component, then wrap your parent component in a special context component called a context provider, put the data you want to pass down on the provider, and finally access that data in any child component with the useContext hook. Portals, on the other hand, are kind of like context but for components. Portals let you move React components into any HTML element you select. Portals are great for components that can't be displayed properly because of their parent's component styles, for example for displaying modals, drop-down menus, and tooltips. To create a portal, just use the createPortal function, pass your component to it, and choose the HTML element where you'd like your React component to appear. Suspense is a special component that helps you handle loading a component or its data. Suspense is helpful for components that take some time to fetch data. It provides a better user experience to show a fallback component, like a loading spinner, until the data is available, instead of nothing. Suspense is also useful if you're lazily loading a component, which lets us load a component only when it's needed. Since React apps are all JavaScript, errors that happen during rendering can totally break your app. Error boundaries are components that let you catch app-breaking errors and show a fallback component to tell the user about what happened. For example, our app will crash if we run this code because it throws an error when there's no user. To prevent our app from crashing, we'll first add an error boundary to display a fallback component with a more helpful error.
Same here, bro. I love it, man. Like, it's challenging, but think about how we can make anything. We can build anything. Like, to me, there's not a lot of things that are more cooler than that, you know? Especially with the way that the world is and with technology and how, like, there's so many ideas, man, like, that I have lingering that I can't wait to get to when I do get a chance to get to them. I had a talk with that lead dev I was talking about with that interview, and he gave me so much more hope. He was like, bro, right now the market sucks. Sure, the job market sucks, but the first 2 years that you're a developer and that you're employed are gonna suck no matter what. But once you get through that, things get better. So, you know, it gave me a whole lot of like confidence in what everything that's going on, and that, you know, I feel more serious about my understanding and stuff now too than when I first started. And yeah, man, I agree. Coding is awesome. I'm glad that I get to do this every day.
Error message to be displayed to the user. Now, if you really want to dive deep into React, I've put together a complete bootcamp to help you master every one of these concepts from front to back.
We got some more videos to react to in here. I kind of think this one might be interesting. How JavaScript is made. JavaScript. Maybe later though. Technical debt. 4 coding myths. How data structures. Coding myths seem like that might be a good one. Maybe this one. Is this sound still good over here?
My PHP course, I teach basic data structures. My JavaScript course,
He's a little low.
Data structures. Beyond that, you don't really need to know it. It comes in
Crispy camera though.
Things that only come into play, like data structures, having a really getting to some more advanced data structures that are out there.
Yeah, see, someone said turn up the
I've
mic.
been doing this for decades.
Just because he's so low, let's see if we could get
So yeah, I wouldn't be worried about that. So
I think
that's
Prime
myth
had a
number
good
3. Myth
video
number 4,
drop recently. Why CS is dead. This is 10 minutes.
There for a second. I'm willing. I'm willing to hear you out. Good thing I can't see what that is.
These are the top 4 reasons why CS is 100% dead. Number 1 is competitiveness. Everybody already knows and agrees with this. Number 2 is overpopulation.
Oh man, wow. Okay, first off, I would just like to throw this out there that I thought this was about CSS, not CS. Okay, computer science versus cascading stylized sheets are extremely different. And so when he said it was competitive, I was genuinely confused there for a second. It took me a second to get there. Okay, CS being computer science, not that other thing. Wow. Okay. See, the thing is that here's this argument that I find that it's really, really difficult to be made. You come out of a boot camp, let's say whatever it is. You're coming out of a boot camp. You're coming out of something. You've been doing it for 6 months, 8 months. You've been practicing on your own. You've been doing your own thing. You've been building your own stuff. You've been effectively doing cyber plumbing where you're hooking up Clerk. I don't know what else people use. Clerk, Vercel, all these kind of things. And that's what you can do, right? You're effectively primed to be a marketing site generator for a startup like Devin, right? Because Devin has a sign-in, but you can't actually even use anything useful. So you go and do that and you practice that for like 8 months, and then you go out there and you're like, I want to be hired. And people are like, why should I hire you? You can't do anything that's distinct, whereas you can do all of that
Wait a minute, that's a little too real.
exact same stuff that I just got done describing and be getting a computer science degree where there is just a foundation there that is also super duper useful. You know, just like we've been doing right now, building our own TCP connection and all those kind of things. I based that a lot off of my networks class, in which I had to do a lot of these things. And then later on, I had to build a video protocol. And then later on, I've had to do this many, many times. There's a lot of transferable skills. But I will say that I do think there is definitely a huge waste of time in college. I'm not saying that college is somehow this fantastic place. I'm not some fool that thinks that there is people that go to college and people that don't, right? That's just not how it works. Some of the best engineers I've ever worked with have been self-taught engineers. It's not that you can't. I just think that it's very, very difficult, okay? Watch the whole video first. Why? Why would I watch the whole video first? We're going to talk about each point one at a time. Okay, and if he memes on me at the end, that's just what happens. Okay, you accept it, you go through it, you enjoy it. Okay, but we're talking about this. Okay, we're talking about this. No, because there's 4 points. We're gonna talk about each of the 4 points. Dude, do you guys have like goldfish memory problems? There's 4 points here.
Population, it used to only be a few people doing this, and now everyone and their mom does it. Number 3 is
I don't think that that's a problem. Here's how I think about that argument. Okay. First off, I can't wait for the MILFs to get into computer science, okay? That will be great. Anyways, that's for everyone's mom. But besides for the moms, I will say that this is what happens, is that the old curve looks something like this, right? They're both normal distributions, assuming, well, they're not normal distributions. I actually assume they're alpha beta distributions. I think at one point it was more of a normal distribution, right? Where there was like the middle of the pack, and then there was approximately the same amount of people that were very skilled and the same amount of people that were underskilled, kind of coming out of college within like the first 5 years of industry, right? This could represent this. But now that we're seeing this huge influx of people that are all self-taught, all coming into it, I think we're seeing something that looks more like this, right? Where I think we've just shifted that line back. And so for you to be able to get a job, you have to kind of exceed pretty far into this curve, right? You have to get over the MILF curve. But I think this is what makes things a lot more hard in today's world, is that we now live in a thing that's been a left-shifted normal distribution, effectively, or a long tail alpha. What is this? This is called alpha beta distribution, and it just makes everything super duper hard. And I think that a lot of people, the majority of people falling into here, are going to feel really disenfranchised. And this is where you're going to start getting people that they want new guidelines. I think this is where a lot of the angst in computer science and a lot of againstness of degrees comes from, is that we should all be able to be self-taught in programming. It does not require a degree, but there is most certainly some really good things that come out of it. And I feel like getting a degree is kind of like getting a cheat code, because you got 4 years to prepare versus 6 months. Like, just the time alone, right? Just the time alone is just such a huge benefit in comparison to going through 6 months. Like, you get so much more. You just get so much more. This is not a MILFs diagram, okay? This is, guys, get off the MILFs, okay? Okay? And I think that if you're in college, that doesn't somehow relieve you of doing side quests. If you're not doing side quests, I don't see how this is going to work out. Find good mentors is greater than boot camp or college. It's an interesting proposition. I don't know how to.
Do y'all have mentors? Is anybody in here
Side of
grabbed the mentor
quests
yet?
If you're not doing side quests, I don't see how this is going to work out. Find good mentors is greater than boot camp or college. That's an interesting. It's an interesting proposition. I don't know how to.
Do y'all have mentors? Is anybody in? I pulled this up so I could read the chat. That's what's up, bro.
What to do with that, though, in the sense that mentors are fantastic during college. They're fantastic after college. They're fantastic during boot camps. They're fantastic at any point in your life. But mentors, a good mentor should be some sort of force multiplier. By you meeting with them, they should be able to say, take your learning rate, your acceleration rate, your success rate, whatever it is, and make it into like a 1.2, a 1.3, right? They're able to do something and make you move faster.
Man, I got to get
but
better at coding.
You can say one's better than the other, right? I think that it's just simply a multiplier more than anything else.
grinding. You have to grind thousands of hours just to be average. And number 4.
Maybe, but true.
That's very true, I would say. You definitely have to grind thousands of hours just to be average. We playing catch up.
I think it just depends on what you grind. Do you know what I mean? It's true for anything. Well, it's true for anything, but I feel like generally in our field, the learning curve is a little bit larger. And so you can spend quite a bit of time. You know, like I think of us more like golf. It takes a lot of time to get good at it, right? It does take a lot of time. And some people are naturally gifted, and so their time is faster. Some people are not as naturally gifted. Generally, software engineers are paid statistically above average because it's such a hard thing to get good at.
Fetch
right?
all
If it was
personnel?
simple to get good at, you wouldn't.
Fetch all personnel. I thought we just use fetch personnel. Okay, we're switching it up. My bad. I had to pause that so I could think.
Get paid a lot. It's real talk. Like, can we all agree to that? It makes sense, right? It genuinely makes. I mean, this is just, you shouldn't have to think too hard to go, okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Which is good. It's good that you're in, like, if you.
Have you ever been working on something, trying to code, and then you stopped and you just thought, like, okay, this is why we make so much money, because this shit is so intricate and so hard and takes so much time. I have definitely had multiple times where I was working on something and I couldn't figure it out, and then I finally figured it out, and I sat there and I thought about it like, man, this is crazy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, maybe we just didn't do error. I've definitely had that thought, though.
Really think about it. You want to be in a field that is hard. You want to be in a field that people pay you a lot because it's hard to do. Because if you're not in that field, man, like you're living a life where like the closer and closer it starts getting to like warm body replace, which I think is just really hard. Like, that's just such a hard place to work. I did that for years, man. Like, being a server, sure, there's really talented servers out there, and there are some people that are just genuinely better at being a server. But, man, there's plenty of just low-level server jobs, and it is emotionally brutal. It is just unfun. It just is. I've been a dishwasher. I've worked a lot in restaurants, and it is just hard. It is just hard stuff. All right, what's number 4?
4 is cheating. Pretty much everybody does it, and it makes it really unfair. And so, yeah, that's...
I don't get the last one. Cheating. Let's just walk through his argument. Let's just pretend he's saying that everybody in school cheats to get their work done. Okay, let's say that that's true. Well, then they're going to come out completely useless, right? They do. They come out useless. There really is no shortcut to learning. There just isn't. There's ways to learn faster, absolutely, but there's just no shortcut. And so when I hear that, I think, okay, he must not be meaning that. He must be meaning something different. Is he referring to nepotism? And what I mean by nepotism, I mean that there's a group of people who are the in crowd. So they get these in treatments, meaning that you're able to, say, get a job easier because you have friends who are in it. So if you go to, say, Stanford, even if you cheated your way through school, you're friends with the guy that created something. Therefore, you just simply kind of get this easier pass into it. And I'm not sure how much that even is existing at this point as far as like software engineering goes. It's too competitive of a field, and too many people are wanting to be really good at it. So I am just completely... I just don't believe this. Like, I just don't. And especially this statement right here that says higher grades equals more likely to be higher. I think that might be true in non-American places. I don't know what that looks like in other places, right? So I can't really say the difference here. But I do not believe that in the Americas, it's not like it does not work that way. It just it is extremely difficult. I've never seen someone ask me a single thing about my college. I am from Asia, and no one has asked me about college. I assume there's plenty of places that are more insistent about degrees and grades than there are in other places, right? I think that's reasonable.
That's why the new Counter-Strike game is just completely dead. It has some good game mechanics, but other than that, it's just inferior to other games. This also has nothing to do with computer science, by the way.
He was right, though. Okay. I stand by everything I just said, okay? You know what? I'm not taking the L here. I just refuse. I refuse to take the L. I liked everything we just talked about. I refused. Dude, we had the MILF chart go. We had a lot of discussions about people flooding into the field.
He was talking about...
Absolutely.
He was talking about Counter-Strike the whole time. That's funny.
Absolutely refuse to take anything but the W here, okay? Just W's all around. Can we get W's in chat? I see some L's. I see some L's trying to creep in, but you know what? That was just dubs right there, okay? MILF chart off the charts, all right? The name is Counter-Strike.
That's funny. Yo, I found this new channel that y'all might think is funny. Y'all probably saw this too already. Senior interview with senior JS developer. It's funny that this video is what made me start using my whiteboard, even though he's trolling the whole time.
So the CV looks
if y'all look at my whiteboard, I actually have the whole thing is filled with notes and stuff now.
But it all comes down to how fit you are selecting JavaScript libraries. Imagine we have two options, the T3 and the T4 style. Both use Next.js, TypeScript and gRPC, but the T in T3 stands for Theo, the skater boy from California. Whereas the T in T4 stands for technology. Now T3 uses Tailwind, while T4 uses Tamagui. Tailwind has a huge community of 4,994 hodlers online in the Discord versus 584 Tamagotchis. But the Tamagotchis are more cutting edge, where the last commit for Tailwind was last week. For Tamagui, we push on safe. T3 is primarily focused on web apps, while T4 is immediately cross-platform, because T4 natively compiles to mobile as React Native through Expo. Now Tailwind doesn't map one-on-one to React Native, but the T3 stands have tried for a long time to get it compatible with Tailwind CSS React Native, which was renamed to NativeWind once it started working, which was abandoned for a long time, but was made compatible with React Native after its developer, the 1X dev, joined Expo in 2023, and now it's fully compatible with mobile anyway, so forget this whole part. Now the real problem comes in when we look at auth and OR. T3 uses NextAuth, or its hosted solution Clerk. Now NextAuth is framework agnostic, but it doesn't work on mobile. We could of course use Clerk Expo to make it work on mobile, or hack the NextAuth.js exposed REST API and see where things go. But even if you fix the NextAuth client, NextAuth also doesn't work with Hono workers for free edge deployment on Cloudflare. T3 also uses Prisma, which is super inefficient and ugly. I mean, just try a simple query. If your result is in the first row in the first JSON, it will still revalidate every row in every JSON. Now T4 uses Supabase for user data and sells it to the darknet. But there is also a Lucia branch for this, which works with any ORMO database, if you know how to write the adapter. Now Lucia and Supabase work on mobile flawlessly. Now instead of Prisma, T4 uses Drizzle, straight
See how much shit we have to learn?
out of the gate. Supabase and Lucia are edge compatible, which means if we deploy in Hono, we can scale to infinity and beyond for $0 if our bundle size is under 1 megabyte. Which is also why we cannot use Prisma, because Prisma bloats the package just like this company's HR department. Now Drizzle also works on the edge.
Yeah, but couldn't Drizzle just...
Silence. Drizzle could work on T3, but the documentation hasn't been started yet. Now Lucia would also work with T3, but I haven't tried that, so I'm not going to consider. Now T4 also uses helper libraries like ValidBot, $1 Million JS, PrettyK, Virtual Edit, and JotUI. Now we could of course extend T3 with those, but we would first extend T3 with Pusher for WebSockets. Actually better to use Soceti. And Plausible and Umami for analytics, because Google Analytics is Google Analytics. And we would also add Zustand to abandon Redux from our vocabulary, just to reintroduce it once they abandon Zustand. JavaScript. All of this creates an insanely huge bundle, which we're lucky to expand with bundle reducers and next bundle analyzer. I love it. Now T3 would typically host on Vercel, which is a cash cow, so it's better to use PlanetScale, which is a cash cow, so it's better to use Railway, which is like Heroku, which is now owned by Salesforce, and therefore evil. Vercel with a V, like in evil. And evil with an E, like in Emacs Life. And Emacs Life with a C, like in free hosting on Cloudflare. T4, we would just host straight on the edge
of glory.
Which means if we can get Slack to compile under 1 mega, then we can scale it to infinity for $0 on Hono without sweating. The only bottleneck then is our database. Not even the database, but the write-offs. SQLite is by definition on the edge, but is still slower than speed of light. Cloudflare says they're working on that. They say that every week. Next week is Cloud and Innovation Week, so next week is different. Now we don't have the source of Slack anyway, so now we could of course rewrite the whole stack from React Next to Vue Next, Svelte, Solid and Solid Start, Quickie and Quickie Market, and each comes with their own whole ecosystem, like Vue Croissant, or Next Beefy, or Svelte Wasabi, to reuse 0% of our code. Don't write this down, next week all of this is gonna change. So, but then again, we might as well rewrite straight to Rust. Good idea.
I didn't say anything.
Now the backend we can compile to WebAssembly and host on WorkerOS for free. The front end? Now for the desktop app supporting the React web code, we would need a native web view. We would use Tauri because Electron is bloated and ships its own Chromium. Now Tauri is basically like a V8 one.
What is V8?
Exactly. Spotify, Slack, Discord, Office, and most importantly, a Vira-free antivirus. all use Electron, but we will use Tauri because while Electron is a compiled app with a web view that can render Rust compiled WebAssembly, Tauri is a Rust app, and we save on RAM. So T4 has 1000% code sharing, performance, production readiness, performance, lean optimized bundle size, free hosting on Hodo runtime edge workers, cutting edge, performance, 1000% type safe styling, free hosting, a purple landing page. But everybody uses performance, Tailwind, so you know, years ago, we would just set up a PHP and SQL and alarm stack on a $5 server with jQuery, and our 5 users would be happy. But this, of course, would require backups, server management, security, which I know how to do, but they lost trust in me after our 4th user data cleanup this month. In fact, everybody's changing back to servers. 2024 is the year of the serverlessness. They said that 10 years ago. They say that every year, but this year, they're out of VC funding. We have an entire abandoned office building, so might as well go with JavaScript. So we would use Next.js, HoloGraphQL, TypeScript, AWS, and Supabase.
What is keep on?
Right. Exactly.
I know this might.
That's too funny. What else we got here? Scams in software engineering.
For me to watch, and so we're gonna watch it. Big Box Sui, by the way, check it out. Big Box Sui. I have never been harassed so much about watching this video, which makes me think, okay, it's from Big Box. Everyone's asking me to watch it. It probably mentions me. That's probably where this is going. I'm hoping that I'm not gonna get dunked on, but let's find out. I'm ready to get fired. Dude, it's gonna be Vim. He's gonna dunk on Vim. I already know what's gonna happen, and then I'm gonna be Sag, okay?
Alright, okay. Software is known for producing a lot of scams. Think Nigerian Prince, Ty Lopez, crypto NFT, AAA gaming industry. But I ain't talking about all that. I'm talking about the lies sold to developers. And it's a pretty long list, so buckle up. Clean code.
See, I knew it. I knew it. I knew it.
So buckle.
Mustaches. Look at that. Look at that. That's a skill issue, okay? That is a skill issue. I can already tell it's about to happen. I can already feel it. I knew I came in on the defensive here because I knew what I was getting into. This is a skill issue. I'm sorry. If you can't grow a mustache, you got skill issues, okay?
Clean code.
Genetic
You see,
skill
the way
issues.
Charles Ponzi put the Ponzi in Ponzi scheme, Uncle Bob has put the B in Bakwas. Clean code has gone through a reputational renaissance, similar to Ellen, Jimmy, and James. Bro's whole book is a filler episode. When you take the energy of a junior engineer and combine it with such riveting advice, that's how you get a pull request the size of Epstein's list. Ain't nobody reviewing that, bro.
Just give us the list. Just do it. Just do it. Why? Why not? Why not? Man, this is already, it's too much, but it is true. Man, I'm very curious what Uncle Bob has to say of why 4 to 6 lines per function. Like, why put that arbitrary limit on a function? I just can't imagine anything good comes out of that, because I have my opposing theory, which I think HTMX has claimed the best as far as like a term for it, which is locality of behavior. The more you have to jump from function to function, like the less easy it is to hold in your head what's happening, right? The equal thing happens when you have a really long function that does a lot of things. It's really hard to hold it all in your head, but I think it's significantly easier than 40 functions all in your head trying to figure out what those things happen. Locality of behavior is very, very, very useful. And so I just would rather err on slightly longer functions that maybe it does 1.5 things, as opposed to 4 to 6 line functions is like considered like a good range. Anything beyond that is considered like time to refactor. Now, obviously, that's not a hard and fast rule, but
Yo, what's up, bro?
I think you would like the.
Yeah, I think after I finish these couple of
philosophy of software design,
I'm still working through these errors, but I think I'm getting closer to the end. What we got? Let's see how many pages. Personnel page, that's 1. project team 2, personnel tab 3. So I got 3 pages and I'm done. Knock on wood, because I don't know if that's gonna open up another can of worms. Hopefully not. But yeah, then after that, I'm probably gonna.
By the way, for those that
wrap
don't
it
know,
up.
it's right here. I think that's locality of behavior. Carson Gross, the primary feature for easy maintenance is locality. Locality is the characteristics of source code that enables a programmer to understand that source by looking at only a small portion of it. This is good. The behavior of the unit of code should be as obvious as looking only at that unit of code. This is good. This is exactly what we're talking about. Locality of behavior. It's very, very different than clean code. Clean code is the polar opposite of locality of behavior code. And I'm not saying locality of behavior doesn't have its own edges and issues. It certainly does. And it can certainly get out of hand easily.
Barely read my own code. And that's Jamie Oliver's recipe for a 3 a.m. Christmas Eve production outage. And off the back of the last famous manifesto, Uncle Bob decides to write his own on the topic of agile development. Now, this is the manifesto that deserved US military intervention, because it infested the whole world, from Brazil to India, Orlando to Ohio. We're all super happy sitting in another sprint planning. Agile was a 9,000 IQ chess move by the boomers to get into tech without coding. But quite honestly, we're the plebs, because we listened to the boomers and fell for the next scam. CS degree.
There were so many shots fired. I'm not even sure what to do. I'm not even sure how to process all of this. And I've stopped at this frame. This is the frame that we've decided to stop at. Okay, that was just a massacre. Dude, that was just a massacre. Brazil mentioned, potentially. Brazil might have been mentioned.
So wait a minute. Fetch
I'm going to say something, and I think a lot of people might be upset about it. Agile? In its manifesto is great. Let me explain why. Every team themselves should decide how they commit and run their own little units. Right? That's like one of the most basic forms of Agile. I think that's great. Every sub-little team should have their ability to make the decision for how they follow their own process. What's the problem? What's the obvious problem of it all? A sub-team isn't an island unto themselves. No, it's not management. Oh, I mean, you could call it management, but not like people management. It's that that each team then needs to also get in line with each other. And so what ends up happening? Everyone discusses, hey, we need to come up with some sort of, everybody is in step to make the same decisions across this thing. And so what ends up happening? You get the average of everyone's decision, okay? I don't know if you know this, but this is why group decisions suck. This is why you should have an informed captain, and you should never have a group of people making a decision. Because on one side, you have really, really bad decisions, bad ones right here, right? And then in the middle, you have just the place that makes nobody happy, right? And when I say bad decisions, I mean someone else's opinion at this point, okay? And maybe it's actually not that bad. It's kind of like an inverse normal curve. And this is great decisions, by the way. These are my ideas, okay?
Shit.
These are your ideas that I don't like. These are my ideas that I do like. And this is the middle ground, which is actually the worst place to be. It is actually the bad ideas. And so what happens is that when you get a group of people, well, you can't go over here, and you can't go over here, so you compromise right here. You compromise right in the middle, and guess what? You've created the worst possible solution. And now we've codified this term today. We've actually created a word for this exact thing. And that word, it's called Scrum. Scrum is the codification of Agile interacting among many teams. It's just the worst possible outcome ever. And so what I really mean by this is that Agile truly is communism. It always fails, and people always blame that we did not do it correctly. All right? I'm sorry. This is designed by committee. It is. All right? It has never been tried. I get it. It's never been tried. Really. There's no real Scotsman. You've never done Agile correctly. JavaScript can work on a server. I've heard it, okay? I've heard it a lot of times. I'm also trying to equally offend as
Personal
many people
data.
as possible. And by the way, I have a lot of opinions on this one, and so this one's already triggering me. So this is actually, I'm still a pro college person, but let me just give you my base take before we go on. I think
I might be getting sleepy / burnt out because my brain kind of stopped working.
that computer science would do a lot better if we dropped all of the core requirements, all the stupid stuff to make you a well-rounded person. When I say stupid stuff, I actually don't mean it's stupid. I think people should go to school to become well-rounded, but the first initial courses in becoming a well-rounded person are absolutely worthless, okay? Nobody cares about the Köppen weather system, okay? The fact that I'm going to be like, well, Brazil is a class A sub B tropical rainforest, it's a Köppen weather system. Like, people don't care. No one cares. It's completely worthless. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this to ourselves, okay? No one cares that California has a Mediterranean climate on part of it, and that's what makes it such a desirable place for people to live. I get it, but nobody actually cares, okay? That's not helpful information. It doesn't make me more well-rounded, okay? I can say the word Köppen weather system, and it doesn't mean anything, okay? I had to spend a semester learning about dumb geography things when I was a senior in college because I did too much LSD as a freshman in college, and so I had to make up a bunch of core classes, and one of them was geography. It was worthless. I didn't become a more well-rounded person. I didn't get to go like read the great poets. Like, imagine if I had to take a class that was like reads Wordsworth and Augustine and Thomas Aquinas and Coleridge. Like, that would have been a great experience. Why didn't I get the reading the poetries of the peoples? Instead, I got some stupid ass Köppen weather system. So I totally get it. This is why college is bad. I would really, Marcus Aurelius, I'd totally down to do that. Hot take. Master's degree is the new bachelor's. Doubt. Anyways, I do think it'd be really awesome if we had something like a trade school for programming. And I don't mean a boot camp. See, boot camps are fundamentally flawed because boot camp's goal is to just make you learn one thing and get you out as quickly as possible in a market that was starving for need. No, I don't want that. I want something that's like a 2-year kind of traditionalized school that's at a fast pace, that like forces you to build a compiler, that forces you to do some operating system, some database stuff. Like, you actually do real part of it, like a trade school, right? I think a trade school would be way, 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 way better because I don't think you need all of this. I think college is a dying sport for a lot of people. And so CS degrees is how we get a lot of that. And so, but boot camps are pieces of shit and largely leave a lot of people disenfranchised and are terrible. There's like a tech school somewhere in between, right, that I think would be really, really good. Anyways, just a thought. That's what I think. A lot of colleges suck too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, bro, I'm down. What time does it start?
The thing that makes college nice is that they have something called ABET accrediting. And what makes it really nice is that with ABET accrediting, it forces you to teach certain subjects. So even if the teacher sucks, you have to go off and learn by yourself.
How long do we have left?
And read the book and become good at it, right? And at least you force yourself to go see stuff, right? My favorite, I started off at Montana. I was also at Montana State University, best one ever, but I dropped out and transferred to Colorado State. They wouldn't accept my dumb general electives. I refused to retake them and got accepted upper level electives. It isn't about being well-rounded. It's about getting those tuition dollars. Well, at one point it was about being well-rounded. The whole point of getting a bachelor's degree was for you to be able to leisure well, for you to be able to study and read the poets and do all that. So the original college degrees, that's why it had so much emphasis on writing and reading the poetry and all that kind of stuff, right? Anyways, all right. Now that we've said all that and now you know exactly where I stand, it's time for me to become emotionally damaged.
Now, although degrees are a society-level scam, leave it to programmers to over-engineer education. Like in any other occupation, you have simple linear career paths. You want to become a plumber? Go to trade school. You want to become an accountant? Get a degree. But the path to software engineering is like a fidget spinner. There's like 3 options and none of them work anymore, and it's also out of style. Despite your education, all developers can agree, leak code is a method.
Okay, we gotta quit having DevRels this right here just has to stop. Can we all agree that you're not helping your case, Cloudflare? No, ain't nobody helping right now. Okay, this just has to stop. We just gotta stop doing this.
All developers can agree, leak code is a massive scam. Look man, it's been discussed to death, but all I'm gonna say is, do you think mechanics need to build a car from scratch to get a job? All this grinding just to code some front end. But wait, that's another scam.
Okay, this too many scams are happening at one time. Leak code. So some of the worst insults I've ever received are because I have a mixed feelings about leak code. And so I always get this. I get Prime is out of date because he thinks people should do whiteboard interviews. So what's the alternative? Right? The alternative is what? Apprenticing for free or some paid contractual amount? Like, that's going to happen. That's not going to happen, okay? That may work for some people, but that's largely not going to work. 2, a take-home. Okay, so you want me to work for what, 10 to 20 hours on a take-home? Is that what you're suggesting? No, that favors people who have no kids, that have free time, right? You optimize for a certain set of people with any interview. Take-homes are absolutely the worst. I know. So again, what's the alternative? There's someone has one where you go to the place and you get a problem where you work on, where you have to like hook up to an API and make some calls and do all that. 6 months apprenticeship, it just ain't no way, right? I'm not taking a contract for 6 months. The thing I like about leak code, and by the way, I have told you many times, don't do leak code. I think the only leak code you should do are the array problems. If you're going to do anything with the leak code, learn data structures and algorithms, okay? Be good at data structures and algorithms. You can solve most.
Are you guys good at data structures and algorithms? I'm not gonna lie. I haven't looked at that stuff since I was doing courses. Tempted to go check it out.
Most problems just knowing a few data structures. Like almost all problems in interviews can be solved with this. Again, I get just hammered in the comments about this specific thing, which is that if you just know your data structures and algorithms, you will pass most whiteboarding interviews. You will. The third one is just come up with better whiteboarding interviews. I think that largely works if you can come up with good ones. One of my favorite questions to ask is an async request queue. Just simply go out there and just build something that takes in a promise, or that takes in a promise factory and produces out a promise. And when you're done with that promise, and when you can execute that promise factory, you will execute it, get out the promise, resolve it, and return out the return value or propagate forward the error. Like, it's just pretty simple. It's not like a hard thing to do.
Now, my question would be, are you allowed to Google to answer that question? Because I could do it. I could at least pseudocode that. But if I know that, like, I would need to see if there's any errors in there or not. Like, if I could do it within VS Code, possibly. Or at least I think I could talk my way through it enough to where they would know, okay, this guy knows how to code, kind of. His syntax just isn't perfected yet.
It's pretty easy, but man, I've watched some pretty crazy things. By the way, I've seen people prompt interview. By the way, I gave this as a question, and I watched somebody prompt interview me. I watched somebody do this. It was awful. Okay, I watched somebody give me the old AI. Okay, I watched them go like this. This is what they'd literally do. They had their camera on them, and they go like this.
That would be me.
And then, I kid you not, they actually had the gall to tell me, I've never worked with TypeScript. I don't know TypeScript. And then proceeded to do the following thing. Const foo equals array.shift bang. They did that after telling me they've never worked with TypeScript. And I was just like, bro, you tell me you've never worked with TypeScript, but you just did a false or a what's called a forcing undefined removal in a single bang like that? There ain't no way. Ain't no way you don't know anything about TypeScript and you're hitting that. What's array shift bang? It forces out the undefined. So it just becomes T. It becomes type T. And so to tell me that you never did it, you're off looking at a screen and typing, and then you hit me with the bang T at the end, ain't no way. Ain't no way. Right? How did you respond? Of course I didn't say anything. I don't call out people because I wanted to see where they could go. And guess what? What happens when there's a single problem and you are doing and you're using ChatGPT? What happens with ChatGPT when there's a problem? It reproduces a new set of code. Yeah. So guess what that person did? They also went, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna start over. Erased everything and started over from the beginning. Yeah. Certainly. Anyways, ChatGPT, ridiculous. And so that's my take on leak code, which is if you know just a little bit of if you know how to do the array stuff, which by
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a break and come back and think through this. Dang, that's what's up. Yeah. That's true. That's what I need to do, man. I'm gonna check out the one that you posted for real. But shoot, how long? I think I've been rolling for 3 hours now. So I'm gonna take a little break, think through that one page that I'm working on, to stop trying to ask ChatGPT to do it. I'm gonna just have to like actually read every single line and see what's wrong. I only have 3 more of these to go, and then I think I can at least compile and see where things are at from there, and hopefully get on the next issue. I have the rest of tonight, depending on when I go to sleep, and then also all day tomorrow. And then, depending on how early I wake up, my meeting isn't until Monday at like 1 o'clock. So I'm pretty sure I'll be able to finish this stuff by the time I gotta go. But this was episode 20 or 21. I think I'm gonna just go chill, like take some time away from the screen instead of watching the fight, bro. But I appreciate you. And for everybody else, I believe links are in the description. If not, click on any other video. They are in there. Shout out to y'all. We at 21 episodes of Code and Chill. I hope y'all enjoyed this one. I did more coding this time, I think, than in any other one. So I wasn't really chatting as much, but I'm gonna leave it up here in case it does help the rest of our community. Hope you're having a great weekend, bro. Thank y'all for chilling with me. It's been cool, man. I'm gonna try and pop up here more often. You know what I'm saying? I'm Lionel the Builder. I'll see y'all in the school community and in the Discord. And let's keep growing. Let's keep building. Let's keep blasting off. I'll see y'all